Welcome to Monk's Temple. Tonight, as you settle in and rest your head on your pillow, I invite you to let go of the day. Allow me to be your guide as we journey together into the mysterious and peaceful heart of Zen. What the ancient masters often called the religion of no religion. You don't need any prior knowledge for this journey. No special beliefs or experiences. All that's required is that you simply breathe, and let your mind gently drift, as timeless wisdom washes over you like the most gentle of ocean waves. This is not your ordinary sleep meditation. The insights we will explore tonight have transformed millions of lives for centuries. They have a unique power to quiet the most anxious of minds, to dissolve deep-seated stress, and to reveal a profound sense of peace that has been hiding in plain sight all along. Many people discover they experience their deepest, most restorative sleep on their very first night with these teachings. As your body begins to relax and grow heavy, we will gently explore how to release the circling thoughts that so often keep us awake at night. We will find a path to freedom from our everyday suffering, and we will discover the extraordinary magic contained within our most ordinary moments. These are timeless teachings, and they speak directly to your deepest self, beyond all backgrounds, beyond all beliefs. So, let's begin this journey together. The unique perspective. This tradition stands apart from other major world paths in a truly fundamental way. While many systems center around a belief in a supreme deity, or in immortal souls, or in sacred texts considered the ultimate word, this way takes a different path. The founder didn't ask his followers to have blind faith in things they could not verify for themselves. Instead, he extended an invitation. He invited them to explore their own direct experience, to see for themselves the true nature of reality. When the teacher was asked about metaphysical questions about the divine, about the afterlife, about the very beginning of the universe, he often chose to remain silent. Or he would respond not with an answer, but with a story, or with a question of his own, one that would cleverly redirect attention back to the present moment, the only moment we ever truly have. There's a famous story that illustrates this. Two young priests were once locked in a heated debate about the best path to achieve union with the Creator. They couldn't resolve their argument, so they decided to approach the great teacher for his wise opinion. He listened, and then he simply asked them one question: has anyone, back to the seventh generation of your teachers, ever seen this Creator with their own eyes? When the priests had to admit that no one had, the teacher declared their entire goal to be laughable, vain, and utterly empty. This wasn't because the teacher denied the existence of higher beings entirely. Rather, he taught that such speculations were ultimately irrelevant to the true path of liberation. This path acknowledges the existence of many such beings. But these entities, while incredibly powerful and long-lived, are still subject to change and cycles. They remain caught in the same endless wheel of existence as humans, just in more pleasant, more comfortable circumstances. The teacher taught that even the highest of these beings, those who might think of themselves as eternal creators, are still bound by the universal laws of impermanence and dissatisfaction. Another story tells of a seeker who ascends through various realms, asking each level about the ultimate nature of reality. He finally reaches the Supreme Being itself, only to discover that even this Supreme Being doesn't have the answers. In fact, the being is too proud, too embarrassed, to admit its own ignorance in front of the others. For the teacher, seeking final answers from such sources was like asking for directions from someone who is also completely lost. This is the core reason why this is sometimes called a religion of no religion. It doesn't require belief in a supreme being, and yet, it offers a profound and transformative spiritual path. The Founder's Journey. To truly understand this way, it helps to first understand its founder. He was born around 2,500 years ago in what is now Nepal. He was a prince, raised in the lap of luxury, meticulously sheltered by his father from the harshness and suffering of ordinary life. The story goes that when he finally ventured beyond the palace walls for the first time as a young man, he encountered three sights that would change everything: an old person, a sick person, and a corpse. These stark revelations showed him the inescapable reality of suffering, a fate that awaits all beings. Deeply moved and troubled, he made the monumental decision to abandon his privileged life. He set out to seek the root causes of suffering and to find a way to overcome them, once and for all. For years, he followed various spiritual teachers and practiced extreme self-denial. He starved himself, he endured great pain, he denied himself all comfort, nearly to the point of death. But eventually, he came to a profound realization: this path of self-torture was just as unhelpful, just as unbalanced, as his former life of self-indulgence. He had experienced both extremes, and both had failed him. So, he chose a different way. A middle way. And sitting in deep meditation beneath the branches of a fig tree, he awakened to the most profound insights about the nature of reality. He saw clearly that all things are impermanent, constantly changing. That our desperate attempts to cling to what cannot last inevitably lead to suffering. And that what we call our self isn't a fixed, separate entity, but rather a flowing process, deeply connected with and dependent upon everything else around us. After his great awakening, the teacher spent the remaining decades of his life traveling and teaching others how to realize these truths for themselves. He never asked people to simply believe him. His famous invitation was, "Come and see." He urged them to test his teachings through their own direct experience. This way, at its very heart, is a dialogue rather than a proclamation. It is a method, a practical set of instructions, rather than a fixed doctrine to be accepted on faith. The nature of wanting and suffering. At the very core of these teachings is a deep and insightful understanding of desire and its intimate relationship with suffering. The teacher observed that our lives are largely spent in a constant chase. We chase after things we want, and we run away from things we don't want. And yet, no matter how hard we run, we never seem to find any lasting satisfaction. Wanting, by its very nature, can never be fully satisfied. The teacher taught, no matter what you do, you will not be satisfied. That is the intrinsic, unchangeable nature of desire itself. We finally get the things we dream of, only to immediately start dreaming of something else. The cycle is endless, a hamster wheel of wanting. The teacher used a powerful and vivid metaphor for this. He said people cling desperately to material things and selfish desires, often sacrificing their entire lives for them. They are like foolish children trying to lick honey from the sharp blade of a knife. The honey might taste sweet for a single moment, but they inevitably cut their tongues badly in the process. If you look at many elderly people who have spent their entire lives chasing after everything society told them would bring happiness, wealth, fame, status, you often see people who seem covered in invisible scars. Their very beings can appear to be made up of layers of wounds and disappointments. When such people die, there is rarely a peaceful smile on their face. Often, you only see the decay of their unfulfilled hopes. But someone who has lived without being deceived by dreams and false desires, they grow more peaceful and more innocent with age. In death, they become even more beautiful than they were in life. When you live authentically, aging brings a kind of magnificence rather than decay. A special radiance begins to surround you. The teacher suggested a radically different approach to desire. Instead of trying to satisfy it or suppress it, he said, simply look directly into its nature. Observe with bare attention how wanting moves within you, for it is very subtle. If you look closely enough, you will realize two fundamental things. First, desire can never, ever be satisfied. And second, once you truly understand this fact at a deep, experiential level, the power of desire itself will begin to disappear, freeing you from the tyranny of craving. This is the state of peace. This is the state of stillness. This is liberation. It is the state of true satisfaction. The 6 realms of experience. This tradition offers a rich and detailed map that can be understood both literally and as a powerful psychological mirror of our different states of mind. Central to this worldview is the concept of the 6 realms of existence, beautifully represented in the Wheel of Life. At the very top of the wheel, you find the gods. These are beings of great bliss, immense power, and extremely long lifespans. They represent the absolute height of achievement and pleasure. At the very bottom of the wheel are the beings in the hell realms, representing the very greatest suffering and anguish imaginable. Between these two extremes are several other realms. There is the realm of the hungry ghosts, with their tiny mouths and huge, distended bellies, who can never, ever satisfy their intense cravings. There is the human realm, where we currently exist. There is the realm of the angry spirits, beings perpetually filled with rage, jealousy, and violence. And there is the animal realm. Now, we need not take these realms only literally. They can be most usefully understood as different states of mind that we all experience throughout our days. We enter our own personal hell realms when we are feeling intense mental or physical suffering. We become like hungry ghosts when we are consumed by constant, gnawing dissatisfaction. We experience the balanced human realm when we feel reasonably content and clear-minded. We taste the heavenly realms in our moments of great joy and happiness. We become like angry spirits when we are filled with fury and the desire for conflict. And we sink into the animal realm when we act on pure instinct, without awareness or higher consciousness. In a sense, the better person you strive to become, the higher you climb toward the heavenly realms. The worse you become, the lower you sink toward the hell realms. But here is the crucial, important point that is often missed: whatever goes up must eventually come down. You cannot keep improving forever. Beyond a certain point, further improvement inevitably leads to decline. It is like a knife that is sharpened too much, it begins to wear away and become thin. True enlightenment, true awakening, exists nowhere on this wheel. It is not another, higher realm. It is, in fact, liberation from the wheel itself. By trying to become better and better, you are actually binding yourself to the wheel with golden chains. By becoming worse, you bind yourself with iron chains. The teaching shows us the way to break free from all chains, golden or iron, to become completely beyond the limited self. The heart of the insight. One of our most fundamental errors, the teacher taught, is our deeply held belief that we have a fixed, separate self or soul. Now, this is not saying that you don't exist. Clearly, you do. But it is saying that you do not exist as a separate, independent entity, the way you likely feel that you do. The teacher stated that the very concept of self has been fundamentally misunderstood. You exist, but you do not have a separate self. You exist, but you are not separate from the universe. It is this feeling of separation that forms the entire basis of our self-concept. If I am separate from you, then I have a self. If you are separate from me, then you have a self. Consider a map of the world showing North and South America. On paper, they appear as two separate continents. But beneath the ocean, there is only one Earth. All the continents connect. They are one single planet. We appear separate only on the surface. The deeper you go, the more that sense of separation simply fades away. When you reach the very core of your being, it becomes universal. There is no separate self there. There is no isolated soul. This is the most radical and profound teaching. Not only does it suggest there is no God in the sense of an eternal creator, no heaven as a literal place of eternal reward, but it also says there is no eternal soul or self. This can be quite challenging and unsettling, as it seems to leave us with nothing to cling to, nothing to call our own. Without a soul, if death is simply the end, then all our effort can seem meaningless. What, then, is the point of meditation or prayer? But the teacher's great insight was that this very clinging to a permanent self is what causes our suffering in the first place. It is the root of the problem. When we can finally let go of this deep-seated illusion, we discover a freedom and a peace that does not depend on the idea of being a separate, permanent entity. This is not a philosophical theory, this is how our universe truly is. A vast, interconnected network of mutual interdependence, where everything implies everything else, where nothing stands alone. The Four Worlds. In one of the philosophical schools that forms an important intellectual foundation for this practice, there is a profound concept known as the Four Dharma Worlds. This framework helps us understand different levels or dimensions of reality. First is the world of particulars. This is our everyday world, the world of separate things and events that our senses normally perceive. Mountains, rivers, people, buildings, all appearing as distinct, individual entities. Second is the world of unity. This is the unifying principle behind all the particulars. When you truly begin to understand things deeply, you become aware of their relationships to each other, and you eventually see the underlying unity behind them all. It is as if the multiplicity of the world dissolves into a single, seamless oneness. Third is the world of unity and particulars in harmony. This world recognizes that the universal and the particular are not incompatible opposites. Just as you can have a red circle, with the circle being a particular shape and red being a universal color, so too can spirituality and materiality, otherworldliness and worldliness, coexist in perfect harmony. A properly rounded out person is both spiritual and material. Fourth and finally is the world of mutual penetration of all particulars. This is the highest view, where every particular thing is seen to contain and imply all other particular things. Between one event and any other event, there is no obstruction, no true separation. This is the doctrine of the mutual interpenetration of all things. This highest world is often likened to a vast cosmic net where at every intersection sits a brilliant jewel, and each jewel perfectly reflects every other jewel in the entire net. It means that any one event implies all events. The entire universe, past, present, and future, depends on every single member. The whole universe depends on you, just as you depend on the whole universe. This highest view forms the philosophical basis for the practice as a practical, non-intellectual way of life. It is the direct realization that the most ordinary event, drinking tea, washing dishes, even sneezing, implies the entire cosmos. This is why masters so often use ordinary, everyday events to demonstrate cosmic and metaphysical truths, without ever needing to explain them intellectually. The middle way and responsive teaching. The teacher's approach to instruction was fundamentally responsive. This means that rather than simply stating absolute truths, he would offer teachings that were designed to counterbalance wherever a particular person was leaning too far in one direction. It was a medicine tailored to the specific sickness of the student. When people were pursuing happiness too single-mindedly, becoming attached to pleasure, he would teach about life's inevitable suffering. When people were clinging too tightly to the idea of a permanent, unchanging self, he would teach that no such fixed self exists. But the ultimate truth, he showed, always lies in the middle way. Neither extreme suffering nor perfect happiness, neither an eternal self nor a complete non-self. This is why this path is so often described as the middle way. It consciously and carefully avoids extremes of all kinds. The teacher himself had personally experienced both extremes. The extreme of sensual indulgence as a pampered prince, and the extreme of harsh asceticism as a spiritual seeker. Finding both of these paths lacking, he discovered a balanced, moderate path that embraced both spiritual awareness and full engagement with the world. This responsive approach is particularly evident in the tradition we are exploring. When asked a question about religion, a master might reply in terms of the secular. When asked about something secular, they might reply in terms of religion. This is meant to shatter our fixed categories. For example, when a great master was asked, at the end of the age, when everything is destroyed in a great fire, will one thing remain? What is that one thing? The master simply replied, "It's windy again this morning." Another time, a student asked, "Please pass me a knife." The master handed him the knife, but he offered it blade first. "Please give me the other end," said the student, startled. "What would you do with the other end?" the master replied. In the first case, a profound metaphysical question about the end of time is answered with a simple, mundane comment about the weather. In the second, a simple, practical request for a knife instantly turns into a deep philosophical problem. This is the way. It is designed to break through our habitual, linear patterns of thinking and to point us directly toward immediate, direct experience. The direct pointing. This particular expression represents one of the most fascinating and unique developments of the tradition, particularly as it flourished in Japan. What makes it so special is its incredible directness and its profound simplicity. While other forms might involve elaborate rituals, complex visualizations, or detailed philosophical explanations, this way cuts through all of that. It points directly at reality itself, without the intermediary of concepts. It began in China around the 6th century. According to tradition, it was brought by a monk from India who carried a special teaching, beyond words and letters. This tradition eventually made its way to Japan, where it profoundly influenced nearly every aspect of the culture, the arts, the way of life, the very spirit of the people. The word for this practice comes from a term meaning meditation or deep absorption. But it is not just about sitting quietly. It is about bringing complete, undivided awareness to every single aspect of life, no matter how small or mundane. A famous saying declares, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. What changes is not the external activity, but the internal quality of awareness we bring to it. The action may look the same, but the experience of it is utterly transformed. Teachers use a variety of clever methods to awaken their students from the trance of their habitual thinking. One primary approach involves presenting paradoxical statements or questions. Questions like, what is the sound of one hand clapping, or, what was your original face before your parents were born? These questions cannot be answered through logical thinking. They are designed specifically to exhaust the rational, conceptual mind and to open the way for a direct, non-conceptual insight. Another fundamental method is just sitting in meditation. In this sitting, you pay attention to your breath and your posture, you let thoughts and feelings arise and pass, without getting caught up in them or pushing them away. Unlike some meditation practices that focus on achieving special states of consciousness, this meditation is often described as just sitting. It is about being completely present, without seeking anything, without trying to become anything. Arts and ordinary life. One thing that clearly distinguishes this tradition from others is its deep and beautiful artistic expression. It has profoundly influenced Japanese calligraphy, garden design, flower arrangement, pottery, and the tea ceremony. These arts are not just decorative or for entertainment, they are practices that embody core principles, simplicity, directness, naturalness, and a deep appreciation of imperfection. The aesthetic often deliberately celebrates what is incomplete, asymmetrical, or impermanent. A roughly formed tea bowl, with its subtle irregularities and fingerprints, might be treasured far above a perfectly symmetrical, machine-made one. A garden might deliberately incorporate weathered, moss-covered stones and sparse, minimalist arrangements to suggest the beautiful, transient nature of all things. This unique aesthetic is sometimes called wabi-sabi, finding a deep, melancholic beauty in imperfection and impermanence. What is so striking about this approach is how it finds the profound, the cosmic, in the most ordinary of activities. This way does not seek special, ecstatic experiences separate from daily life. Instead, it teaches that awakening is not something exotic or distant. It is the true nature of our everyday experience, when it is seen clearly, without the filter of our judgments and stories. The highest kind of religious or spiritual attainment here has no outward sign that it is religious or spiritual at all. As one ancient poem says, entering the forest, he does not disturb a blade of grass. Entering the water, he does not make a ripple. There is no sign about him to indicate that he is self-consciously religious. This is why the greatest painting and poetry in this tradition often has as its subject matter not religious themes at all, but the most ordinary objects and experiences. Pine branches, rocks, bamboos, a frog jumping into a pond. The most famous of all poems in this vein, by the master Basho, states with utter simplicity, an old pond/a frog jumps in/plop. This poem contains no philosophical statements, no grand ideas. Yet it perfectly expresses the appreciation for the ordinary moment, fully experienced. The splash is just a splash. Nothing more, nothing less. Yet, when it is truly heard, it contains everything. The double bind and practice. One of the core teaching methods in this tradition is what we might call the double bind. This is a situation where you are given contradictory demands that cannot both be fulfilled. Our society itself often places us in such binds. You must be free. You must be natural. You must love me. How can one possibly obey a command to be free or to be natural? The very act of trying creates an immediate contradiction. The teacher deliberately places the student in such binds to bring about a breakthrough in understanding. For instance, the teacher might demand, "Show me your true self, right now." Any attempt you make to present yourself as genuine immediately becomes contrived and inauthentic. Yet, not trying at all is also a form of trying. The student is caught in an impossible situation, a psychic cul-de-sac. When you ask a teacher to help you eliminate desire, which you see as the cause of your suffering, they will quickly point out that your desire to eliminate desire is itself still desire. If you try not to desire, you are, in fact, desiring non-desire. When you try to escape reality, you still feel it chasing you. And even trying not to escape becomes another, more subtle form of escape. This predicament is vividly described as a mosquito trying to bite an iron bull. It is a position of such psychic extremity that there is literally nothing you can do about it. And it is precisely when you find that there is nothing you can do, and also nothing you cannot do, about a given situation, that you can suddenly realize the fiction of being a separate ego. It simply doesn't exist, except as a figment of your imagination, a social convention you've agreed to play along with. This is why they say, when the wrong person uses the right methods work in the wrong way. You might practice meditation for years in order to become enlightened, to gain awakening. But if you are approaching it with the wrong attitude, trying to gain something, to become something, you cannot possibly succeed. Your selfish intent defeats the very practice that is meant to free you from selfishness. The religion of no religion. The term religion of no religion perfectly captures the paradoxical quality of this path. It is not that it rejects religion entirely. It is that it recognizes both the value and the limitations of all religious forms. A famous analogy is to think of religion as a raft, built for the purpose of crossing a river. When you reach the other shore, the shore of awakening, you don't carry the raft on your back. You leave it behind. It has served its purpose. But some people get so attached to the religious forms, the rituals, the beliefs, the doctrines, that they stay on the raft, going back and forth across the river endlessly, never actually stepping onto the shore. The religious teacher can become like a ferryman who never reaches the shore himself. Now, someone does need to return the raft to help others cross. This is the role of the teacher. But they must always remember that the true goal is getting people across and setting them free, not keeping them on the raft forever. When too many people crowd aboard, people start to mistake the means for the end. They worship the raft instead of using it for its intended purpose. In the famous series of paintings called the 10 ox-herding pictures, which depict the stages of spiritual development, the final image is particularly telling. It shows a person returning to the bustling marketplace with bliss-bestowing hands. Having attained awakening, which was represented in the earlier pictures, they have now returned to ordinary life to help others. But they have no outward sign of spiritual attainment. They appear completely ordinary, just like everyone else. This is the bodhisattva ideal, someone who has awakened to their true nature but chooses to return to the world of everyday life out of great compassion for all beings. As one saying beautifully puts it, to return to the source is not the same as never having left. The truly awakened person does not reject the world, but engages with it fully, from a perspective of deep wisdom and boundless compassion. A master once said something that shocks many people: if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. This shocking statement is not a call to violence. It is a powerful pointer to the danger of turning even the most sacred concepts, like the Buddha, into objects of attachment. True awakening involves letting go of all concepts and images, even the most holy ones. We must not cling to the finger pointing at the moon, we must look at the moon itself. The modern relevance. What makes this way so appealing and relevant across so many different cultures is its profound universality. While it emerged from specific traditions in Asia, its essential essence points to something recognized in many of the world's wisdom traditions. It points to the very real possibility of living with greater awareness, more presence, and freedom from our habitual, automatic patterns of thinking and reacting. In our hyper-connected, digitally saturated world, a world that is often profoundly disconnected at the human level, its emphasis on simple presence offers a clear path toward greater wholeness and authenticity. We are so rarely truly present with what is happening right now. Our attention constantly bounces between regrets about the past and anxieties about the future, while the present moment, the only moment we ever actually experience, slips by unnoticed, unlived. A traditional story addresses this directly. A man was running across a field when he suddenly encountered a tiger. Fleeing for his life, he came to a cliff and desperately climbed down a vine. Looking up, he saw the tiger still waiting for him at the top. Looking down, he saw another tiger waiting below. To make matters worse, two mice, one white and one black, began gnawing at the vine he was clinging to. At that very moment, he noticed a wild strawberry growing on the vine. Holding on with one hand, he picked the strawberry with the other and ate it. How sweet it tasted! This story is not about ignoring problems or being irresponsible. It is about our innate capacity to be fully present, even in the most difficult and precarious circumstances. The tigers represent the past and future that so often terrify us. The mice symbolize the passing of time, nibbling away at our lives. Yet, right now, in this very moment, there is a strawberry. The direct, vivid, immediate experience of being alive. Can we taste it fully, even while fully acknowledging our challenges? Digital distraction and presence. In our modern world, we face a challenge the ancient masters could never have imagined: constant digital distraction. Many of us check our phones within minutes of waking up and continue checking them dozens, even hundreds of times throughout the day, often even during conversations with loved ones. Studies show the average person checks their phone over 150 times daily, often without any conscious awareness of doing so. This constant fragmentation of our attention not only prevents us from being present but actually reshapes our brains, making sustained, focused attention increasingly difficult. A modern approach to this might involve simply noticing the urge to check your phone without immediately acting on it. What is driving this compulsion? Is it a fear of missing out? Is it boredom? Is it anxiety? By bringing a gentle, non-judgmental awareness to this habit, we can begin to break its unconscious power over us. This approach is not about demonizing technology. It is about bringing awareness to our automatic, unconscious habits. Most phone checking is driven not by genuine necessity, but by a restless, vague sense that something better, something more important, might be happening somewhere else. This is the very opposite of the emphasis on finding the fullness and completeness of the present moment. Facing difficult emotions. Another domain where this practice offers profound insight is in our relationship with difficult emotions like anxiety, fear, and anger. Many of us go to great lengths to avoid uncomfortable feelings. We turn to distractions, substances, or constant busyness to numb ourselves. Yet, this way suggests a radically different approach. Instead of trying to make anxiety go away, what if you got genuinely curious about it? Where exactly do you feel it in your body? What specific sensations are present? Does it stay the same, or does it change from moment to moment? When you stop fighting the anxiety and instead bring a kind, allowing awareness to it, you may discover something surprising. It isn't a solid, monolithic thing. It is a collection of changing sensations. Perhaps tightness in your chest, shallow breathing, tingling in your hands. By observing these sensations with curiosity instead of fear, they no longer overwhelm you. The anxiety may still come and go, but it no longer controls your life. This approach reflects a fundamental teaching: resistance creates suffering. When we fight against what is already happening, whether it's anxiety, physical pain, or difficult circumstances, we create an additional layer of tension that only amplifies our distress. When we can meet our experience with open, non-resistant awareness, we discover a freedom that doesn't depend on our circumstances being a certain way. Beyond achievement. In the world of work and achievement, this wisdom offers particularly counterintuitive guidance. While our culture celebrates ambition, productivity, and constant self-improvement, it suggests that our relentless pursuit of goals often undermines the very satisfaction we are seeking. Imagine a CEO who proudly describes his rigorous productivity system and his ambitious 5-year plan. A master might listen quietly and then ask, with all this planning and achieving, when do you actually live? Are you constantly preparing to live at some future time when all your goals are finally achieved? When was the last time you fully experienced a single cup of tea without thinking about what comes next? This points to a fundamental insight: life only happens now. Our plans and ambitions have their place, they are not bad. But when they consistently pull us out of the present moment into endless, future-oriented striving, we miss our actual lives as they unfold. Many high achievers discover this truth too late, reaching the pinnacle of their success only to find a hollow feeling of, is this all there is? This does not tell us to abandon meaningful work or healthy ambitions. But it does invite us to hold them more lightly, to find our fulfillment in the process itself, rather than postponing our sense of aliveness until some future achievement is unlocked. Aging and mortality. Another area where this offers uniquely valuable insights is in our relationship with aging, illness, and mortality. Our modern culture often treats these natural processes as problems to be solved, as enemies to be fought with every weapon of science and medicine. This attitude creates tremendous suffering when we inevitably encounter them. A hospice nurse who practiced this way once shared how her practice transformed her work with dying patients. While her medical training had taught her to see death as a failure to be prevented at all costs, her practice taught her to see it as a natural transition, one that could be approached with awareness, dignity, and compassion. She recounted sitting with a man in his final hours. Instead of filling the space with nervous chatter or frantic medical procedures, she simply sat in quiet presence, attuned to his breathing, fully with him. At one point, he opened his eyes and whispered, "Thank you for not being afraid to be here with me." Those simple words revealed how our own fear of mortality often prevents us from being fully present with those who need us most in their final moments. This way does not offer easy, comforting answers about death, nor does it eliminate our natural fear of it. Instead, it invites us to look directly at the reality of impermanence, rather than pushing it away. By becoming intimate with the truth that nothing lasts forever, not our possessions, not our relationships, not our bodies, not our identities, we can appreciate the preciousness of each moment and live with less fear and less grasping. This perspective can be particularly powerful at the end of life. Someone who has lived without being deceived by dreams and false desires grows more peaceful and innocent with age. In death, they become even more beautiful than in life. When you live authentically, aging brings a kind of magnificence rather than decay. A special radiance surrounds you, and you become like a temple of something eternal and absolute. This is how life should unfold, a journey of genuine growth and evolution. If aging makes you bitter and ugly, it suggests you've spent your life licking honey from knife blades. You've been wounded repeatedly by your own desires. Old age becomes dry and tedious, and few can face death peacefully because people so rarely live with true awareness. If someone truly lives, like a candle burning brightly from both ends, their death becomes something beautiful to witness. You'll see their life shine brightest at the very end. In their final moments, they become like a powerful flame. Their entire being concentrates into that single moment, and light seems to radiate from them. Seeing beyond our stories. The practice also offers profound insights for our relationships with others. Many of us approach relationships with a suitcase full of fixed ideas about who the other person is, how they should behave, and what we need from them. These expectations and stories often create disappointment and conflict when reality doesn't match our mental images. A couple on the verge of divorce once attended a relationship retreat based on these principles as a last resort. During a simple exercise, they were instructed to simply look at each other for 5 full minutes without speaking. No words, just looking. For many couples, truly seeing each other without the filter of past grievances, future worries, and fixed narratives is nothing short of revolutionary. Afterwards, the husband shared with surprise, "I saw my wife today for the first time in years. Not who I think she is, or who I want her to be, but who she actually is, right now." That moment of true seeing, of bare attention, created a tiny opening for genuine connection, beyond all their accumulated stories about each other. This practice of seeing without preconceptions applies to all our relationships. How often do we interact with others based on our stored ideas about them, rather than meeting them freshly in each new moment? How often do we only half listen, while simultaneously formulating our response or checking our phones? This teaches us that when we look deeply at others, we see that they are not separate from us. Their joy and their suffering are our joy and our suffering. This understanding naturally gives rise to compassion, not as a moral obligation, but as a natural, spontaneous expression of our fundamental interconnection. There's a wonderful story about 2 monks walking together on a muddy road. They encountered a lovely young woman in a fine silk kimono, unable to cross a large puddle without ruining her beautiful clothes. Without a second thought, the elder monk picked her up in his arms and carried her across the puddle, setting her down safely on the other side. The 2 monks then continued their journey in silence. 5 hours later, the younger monk, unable to contain himself any longer, burst out, "As monks, we're not supposed to touch women, especially beautiful young ones." "Why did you do that?" The elder monk replied calmly, "I left the woman by the puddle 5 hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" How often do we do the very same thing? Something happens. Perhaps someone cuts us off in traffic, a colleague makes a thoughtless remark, or a family member forgets an important date. The actual event might last only seconds, but we carry it with us for hours, days, sometimes even years. We replay it in our minds, we have imaginary arguments, we build elaborate cases for how we've been wronged. Meanwhile, life continues happening right now, in this present moment, but we're missing it because we're lost in our stories about the past. The inner critic and self-acceptance. This also offers timeless wisdom for dealing with one of the most universal human challenges, the inner critic. Most of us have an internal voice that constantly judges, criticizes, and finds us lacking in countless ways. This voice can become so familiar, so persistent, that we mistake it for reality itself, or even for a form of wisdom, when it is actually just a conditioned mental pattern that creates needless suffering. A writer struggling with severe creative blocks once attended a retreat. During a private meeting with the teacher, he confessed that whenever he sat down to write, a harsh voice in his head would immediately tell him his ideas were worthless and that he was fooling himself to think he had any real talent. The teacher listened and then asked a simple but powerful question: when you hear that voice, who is hearing it? This question stopped the writer short. He realized that there was an awareness in him that could observe this critical voice, rather than being completely identified with it. There was a space between him and the thought. The teacher then suggested that each time the critical voice arose, he should simply note, thinking, and then gently return his attention to his breath before continuing to write. This simple practice created just enough space for the writer to recognize that the inner critic was not the truth about him, but merely a conditioned thought pattern. By neither fighting against it nor believing it, he found the freedom to create despite its continuing presence. This approach to the inner critic illustrates a fundamental insight: we are not our thoughts. Thoughts arise and pass in the mind like clouds in the sky. But the sky itself, our basic awareness, remains spacious, clear, and untouched by the clouds that pass through it. By learning to identify with the awareness itself, rather than with the ever-changing contents of our thinking, we find a profound freedom from the tyranny of self-judgment. The freedom of simplicity. The wisdom also applies beautifully to how we relate to possessions and consumption. Our consumer culture constantly bombards us with messages that we need more clothes, more gadgets, more exotic experiences to be happy. Yet, many people find that accumulating possessions brings only temporary satisfaction, before the familiar craving for more returns. A successful businessman who practiced this way shared his experience of consciously downsizing from a large house filled with expensive belongings to a simple apartment with only what he truly needed and valued. The process, he explained, wasn't about aesthetic self-denial or austerity for its own sake. It was about discovering what truly contributed to his well-being versus what merely cluttered his life and mind. He found that with fewer possessions requiring maintenance, insurance, and mental energy, he experienced a greater sense of freedom and clarity. His practice became simply noticing the impulse to acquire new things and questioning whether they would genuinely enrich his life or simply add more complexity and distraction. This approach reflects the aesthetic of simplicity. Not as a rigid standard of minimalism, but as a natural expression of knowing what truly matters. When we are not constantly chasing after the next thing to buy or achieve, we can appreciate what we already have more fully. Psychologists have observed that people who feel powerless internally often try to compensate by buying expensive external things. If someone feels weak inside, they might desperately want the fastest, most powerful car they can find. Their inner strength has faded, so they try to replace it with something external. They feel powerful when the car speeds down the highway. In a sense, they become the car. For years, psychologists have also noted that people with deep, often unconscious feelings of unworthiness frequently have the biggest ambitions. It's been said that nobody goes into politics unless they're trying to prove something to themselves. Politicians often seem to feel inferior inside and can't bear that feeling. They need to prove their importance to the world because they don't truly believe in their own inherent worth. Whatever you lack on the inside, you will try to gather from the outside world. But if you are complete within yourself, if you are at peace with who you are, you can simply relax in your own peaceful presence. Only then can you truly see your own beauty and know who you really are, beyond all achievements and possessions. The origin and evolution. To understand this practice more deeply, it helps to explore its historical origins and see how it evolved as it traveled across different cultures. It didn't appear suddenly or in isolation. It emerged from the rich soil of philosophical thought and practice that had been developing for over 1,000 years. The foundational tradition originated in India with its founder around the 5th century BCE. As it spread across Asia, it naturally adapted to the different cultures and environments it encountered. By the time it reached China in the 1st century CE, it had already developed various schools and philosophical approaches. The particular form that would eventually become our focus began with a legendary figure, a monk from India who is said to have arrived in China around the 5th or 6th century CE. According to tradition, when this monk met with the Chinese emperor, who proudly listed all the temples he had built and the good deeds he had done, the monk bluntly told him, "No merit whatsoever." This shocking response perfectly illustrated the approach, cutting through conventional, transactional ideas of religious practice to point directly at the heart of awakening. This monk is credited with bringing a tradition of direct, mind-to-mind transmission, outside the scriptures. When asked what he taught, he is said to have replied, "A special transmission outside the scriptures, not founded upon words and letters, directly pointing to the human mind, seeing into one's nature." In China, this tradition became known as Chan. It blended Indian teachings with Chinese philosophical traditions, particularly Taoism, which emphasized naturalness, spontaneity, simplicity, and harmony with the flow of nature. This unique synthesis created a distinctly Chinese form that valued direct experience over theoretical knowledge. Chan flourished during the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907 CE, a period considered the golden age of Chinese culture. Great masters developed distinctive, often startling teaching styles that employed surprising tactics to break through their students' conceptual thinking. When Chan was later transmitted to Korea, where it became known as Seon, and then to Japan in the 12th century, where it became known as Zen, each culture added its own unique flavor to the practice. In Japan, particularly, it influenced nearly every aspect of culture, from architecture and garden design to pottery, painting, calligraphy, and even the mindful performance of everyday activities like serving tea or arranging flowers. Today, it has spread worldwide and continues to evolve as it encounters new cultures and modern contexts. While maintaining its essential focus on direct experience, it adapts its forms and practices to meet the needs of contemporary practitioners in diverse settings. Different schools. Within the broader tradition, different schools have emerged over the centuries, each with their own particular emphasis and approach. In Japan, the two main schools are Rinzai and Soto, with a third, smaller school. One school, founded by the Chinese master Linji, emphasizes the possibility of sudden awakening and makes extensive use of koans, those paradoxical questions or statements designed to break through conceptual thinking. In this training, a student might sit for years working on a single koan, such as, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The breakthrough experience, called Kensho or Satori, is a moment of direct insight into one's true nature. Another school, founded by the great master Dogen in the 13th century, emphasizes just sitting, shikantaza, without any particular goal or technique. While one practice can often feel more dynamic and confrontational, the other practice tends to be more gentle, quiet, and gradual. Dogen taught that meditation is not a means to become enlightened, but rather the very expression of enlightenment itself. Practice and enlightenment are one, he insisted. The third and smallest school was introduced to Japan in the 17th century. It incorporated elements of other Buddhist traditions, including the chanting of sacred phrases. Despite these differences, all schools share the fundamental recognition that awakening is not something to be achieved in the future. It is our natural state, when we stop obscuring it with our constant thinking, striving, and conceptualizing. The role of teachers and lineage. In this tradition, the relationship between teacher and student holds a special, crucial place. Unlike some traditions that rely primarily on sacred texts for authority, it emphasizes direct, personal transmission from one awakened mind to another. This is often called warm hand to warm hand transmission. This doesn't mean that it rejects scriptures. Monasteries traditionally have extensive libraries, and monks thoroughly study texts. But it recognizes that intellectual understanding alone, no matter how profound, does not lead to awakening. Something more immediate, more experiential, is needed, the living presence of a teacher who embodies the teaching in their very being. The traditional lineage claims an unbroken succession of teachers going all the way back to the founder himself. The story goes that once, while giving a talk, the founder didn't speak. He simply held up a single flower. Out of all his disciples, only one understood, and he smiled. This flower sermon is considered the first transmission, a direct pointing beyond words. This emphasis on lineage ensures that it remains a living tradition, rather than a fossilized set of ideas. Each generation of teachers brings fresh insight and expression, while maintaining a vital connection to the root teaching. As one saying puts it, not the same, not different. The teacher's role is not to give answers, but to create the conditions where the student can discover their own insight. This often involves skillfully frustrating the student's attempts to grasp it intellectually or to use spiritual practice as a way of improving or protecting the ego. A true teacher is like a clean mirror, reflecting the student back to themselves without distortion. The teacher might appear to be harsh or kind, challenging or supportive, but their fundamental concern is always the student's awakening, not their comfort. Finding an authentic teacher has traditionally been considered essential. While books and recordings can provide valuable information, they cannot offer the kind of immediate feedback, personalized challenge, and living transmission that comes from working directly with a teacher. However, as it has spread globally, new forms of practice and teaching have emerged to make the tradition more accessible to those who might not have access to a traditional teacher in a monastery. The practice of seated meditation. At the very heart of the practice is zazen, or seated meditation. Unlike some forms of meditation that focus on achieving altered states of consciousness or cultivating particular qualities like loving kindness, zazen is often described simply as just sitting. In one school particularly, the emphasis is on shikantaza, just sitting, without any technique or goal. You simply take a stable, dignified posture. Traditionally sitting cross-legged on a cushion with your spine erect, your hands forming a cosmic mudra, and your eyes slightly open with a soft gaze lowered. And then you just sit. You sit fully present with whatever arises, thoughts, sensations, emotions, sounds, without chasing after them or pushing them away. This sounds extremely simple, and it is. But it is not easy. Our minds are conditioned to be constantly busy, planning, remembering, fantasizing, worrying. When we first sit down to practice, we often discover just how restless and noisy our minds actually are. It can be genuinely shocking to realize how rarely we are fully, simply present for our own lives. In this sitting, we do not try to stop thinking or to empty the mind. That would just be another form of striving, another subtle desire. Instead, we let thoughts come and go like clouds in the sky, without getting caught up in their stories. When we notice that we have been carried away by thinking, which will happen countless times, we simply, gently, without any self-criticism, return our attention to the direct experience of sitting, the sensation of the breath, the feeling of the body, the sounds in the room. Over time, this simple, repetitive practice starts to reveal something profound, that we are not our thoughts. There is a spacious, aware quality that contains the thinking but is not defined by it. This awareness is always present, but it is usually overlooked because we are so caught up in the content of our experience, the thoughts, the dramas, rather than the context, the aware space in which it all occurs. The physical posture is considered very important. We sit with dignity, embodying the awakened state rather than struggling to attain it. As a master famously said, "You are perfect just as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This paradoxical statement captures the essence of the practice. We practice diligently, with great care, while simultaneously recognizing that what we are seeking is already fully and completely present. It is traditionally practiced in periods of 25 to 45 minutes, often with walking meditation in between. In monasteries, monks might sit for many hours each day. For lay people, even a regular, daily practice of 20 to 30 minutes can be genuinely transformative. While the formal practice provides an essential foundation, it ultimately is not confined to the meditation cushion. The awareness and presence cultivated are meant to extend to all activities of life. As another saying puts it, it is not some kind of excitement, but concentration on our usual everyday routine. The mindset in daily life. The ultimate aim of practice is not to have special, mystical experiences during meditation, but to bring the qualities of awareness, presence, and compassion into every aspect of our daily life. This is sometimes called carrying the meditation pillow on your head, taking the qualities cultivated in formal practice into all your activities. One way practitioners work with this is through mindful attention to the most mundane, everyday tasks. Cooking, cleaning, gardening, even using the bathroom, all become opportunities for practice. This isn't about making these activities special or spiritual. It's about being fully present for them, just as they are. There's a famous story about a monk who asked his teacher, "How do you practice?" The teacher replied, "When you're hungry, eat. When you're tired, sleep. The monk, confused, responded, "But that's what everyone does." The teacher smiled and said, "No, it isn't. Most people eat while thinking about 100 other things. They sleep while dreaming of 1,000 things. They don't just eat, and they don't just sleep." This story highlights the crucial difference between simply performing actions and being fully, completely present for them. Most of us move through our days on a kind of autopilot, lost in thoughts about the past or future, rarely experiencing the richness and aliveness of the present moment. Practice is an invitation to wake up from this trance, to discover the vividness that is always available in our ordinary experience. This doesn't require changing what we do. It requires changing how we do it, with full, undivided awareness rather than with scattered, divided attention. A teacher developed the beautiful concept of mindfulness bells. He suggested using everyday cues, like the ringing of a telephone, or a red traffic light, or the ping of a new email, as reminders to return to present moment awareness. Any recurring event in your day can serve this purpose. Walking through a doorway, turning on a faucet, waiting for a computer to boot up. Each of these can become a gentle invitation to return to the here and now. This integration of mindfulness into daily activities is particularly important in our modern context, where the frantic pace of life and constant digital distractions make it increasingly difficult to maintain focused attention. By bringing awareness into our everyday moments, we create small islands of presence in a vast sea of distraction. Creativity. It has had a profound influence on the arts, not just in Japan, but worldwide. The approach to creativity, however, is quite different from the Western concept of self-expression. Here, creativity is not about expressing your personal self, your ego. It's about getting the self out of the way, to allow something more universal, more spontaneous, to emerge. In traditional arts like calligraphy, painting, pottery, and flower arrangement, years of rigorous technical training are absolutely required. But the final, essential step is always to let go of the technique, to forget the self, and to allow a spontaneous expression to flow forth. It is only when the artist disappears that true art emerges. This beautiful paradox is captured in the concept of the controlled accident. The artist isn't trying to impose their will forcefully on the materials. Rather, they are working with the inherent qualities of the material, the flow of the ink, the texture of the clay, the natural shape of the branch, allowing something unexpected and authentic to emerge. A pot isn't forced into shape, it emerges through a silent, intuitive conversation between the clay, the potter's hands, and the turning wheel. Influenced arts often deliberately celebrate imperfection and transience. A crack in a treasured tea bowl might be highlighted with gold lacquer rather than hidden. A flower arrangement might include a dying leaf or a bent branch, to honestly acknowledge the impermanence of all things. These aesthetic choices are not mere decoration, they reflect core insights about the nature of reality itself. The influence on creativity extends far beyond traditional Asian arts. Artists, writers, and musicians as diverse as John Cage, Agnes Martin, Gary Snyder, and Leonard Cohen have drawn deep inspiration from it. The beat poets of the 1950s were particularly influenced by its emphasis on spontaneity, immediacy, and direct experience. For anyone engaged in creative work, it offers valuable insights. The emphasis on process over outcome, on working with rather than against your materials, and on allowing rather than forcing. All of these can transform our relationship with creativity. Most importantly, it reminds us that true creativity is not something we possess, but something we participate in when we get out of our own way. Work. In traditional monasteries, work, called samu, is considered an essential part of practice, not something separate from meditation. Monks engage in cooking, cleaning, gardening, and maintenance with the same mindful, attentive presence they bring to formal meditation on the cushion. This approach to work offers a stark contrast to modern attitudes that often see work as merely a means to an end, something we endure to earn money for the real living that happens outside of working hours. It suggests that any activity, when approached with full awareness, can be a vehicle for awakening. The key is to focus on the work itself, rather than being preoccupied with its results or rewards. When we are fully engaged in a task, giving it our complete, undivided attention, something subtle but significant shifts. The artificial boundary between the worker and the work begins to dissolve, and we can enter what psychologists now call a flow state, a condition of optimal experience where we are completely absorbed in what we are doing. A master suggests using the breath as an anchor while working. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. This simple practice helps prevent our minds from wandering into worries about the future or ruminations about the past, keeping us grounded in the present moment reality of our task. Another approach to work involves doing one thing at a time, with full attention. In a culture that often celebrates multitasking, it reminds us that our attention is inherently limited. When we try to do multiple things simultaneously, we often do none of them well, and we deplete our mental resources in the process. By giving our full attention to one task before moving consciously to the next, we not only produce better results but we also experience greater satisfaction. The mind becomes more settled, less scattered. We might actually accomplish more with less effort, simply because we are not wasting energy constantly switching between tasks or recovering from distractions. Perhaps most fundamentally, it invites us to reconsider the very purpose of work. Beyond earning a living, work can be a way of contributing to the well-being of all life, of expressing our deepest values, and of developing ourselves as human beings. When work is approached in this spirit, even the most seemingly mundane tasks can become meaningful and rich. Ethical living. While often associated with meditation and mystical insight, it also offers profound guidance for ethical living. Unlike some religious traditions that emphasize obedience to divine commandments, ethics here emerge naturally from a deep, experiential understanding of our interconnectedness with all life. Traditional ethics are expressed in precepts. Guidelines for speech and action that help create conditions conducive to awakening. These are not seen as absolute rules handed down from on high, but as expressions of innate wisdom and compassion that we gradually internalize and embody through our practice. The most basic precepts include, not killing, not stealing, not engaging in harmful sexual behavior, not lying, and not clouding the mind with intoxicants. These are not followed out of fear of punishment, but from a growing, direct recognition that actions which harm others ultimately harm ourselves as well, since we are not separate from the vast web of life. Here, these precepts are often approached in a positive, affirming way, rather than a prohibitive one. Rather than not killing, we might speak of acting with reverence for all life. Rather than not lying, we might emphasize speaking from a place of truthfulness and compassion. This subtle shift in framing helps us see the precepts not as restrictions on our freedom, but as natural expressions of our own awakening nature. Beyond specific guidelines, the ethics emphasize responsiveness to the unique circumstances of each situation. What is the most compassionate and wise action in one context might be different in another. This doesn't mean that anything goes, but rather that truly ethical action requires moment-to-moment awareness and discernment, rather than rigid, one-size-fits-all adherence to rules. This flexible, context-sensitive approach to ethics is captured in a famous story. A monk asked his teacher, "What is the essential meaning?" The teacher replied, "Do good, avoid evil, purify your mind." The monk said, "That's so simple, even a child of 3 could understand it." The teacher responded, "Yes, but even an old person of 80 finds it difficult to practice." The story reminds us that ethical understanding is simple in theory, but ethical living requires ongoing, moment-to-moment practice and attention. It is not enough to know what is right, we must embody it in our actual actions, in our relationships, in our choices. In our complex modern world, this ethical approach offers a valuable path that avoids both rigid moralism and anything goes relativism. By grounding our ethical choices in a direct awareness of interconnection and in the immediate experience of how our actions affect ourselves and others, it provides a flexible yet robust foundation for navigating the ethical challenges of our time. Relationships. Relationships provide some of our greatest joys and also our most challenging difficulties. They are also incredibly fertile ground for spiritual practice. It offers insights that can profoundly transform how we relate to others, whether in intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, or community connections. One core teaching is that there is no separate, independent self. When we truly begin to understand this, not just as an idea but as a lived experience, we recognize that the boundaries we perceive between ourselves and others are more fluid, more permeable, than we typically assume. This doesn't mean we lose our individuality or personality. Rather, we see our individuality in a larger context of interdependence. From this perspective, the common, often unconscious question, "What can I get from this relationship?" naturally begins to shift to, "How can this relationship help all involved to awaken and flourish?" Rather than seeing relationships as transactions where we try to maximize benefits and minimize costs for ourselves, we can begin to approach them as shared journeys of mutual growth and discovery. Practice also helps us become more fully present in our relationships. How often are we physically with someone but mentally elsewhere? Thinking about work, planning what to make for dinner, or scrolling absently through social media. This divided attention prevents genuine, deep connection from occurring. When we bring mindful, undivided awareness to our interactions, something deeper and more meaningful becomes possible. A simple practice for mindful communication is to truly listen when others speak. Most of us listen only partially, at best. We are often formulating our response, our defense, or our story while the other person is still talking. It suggests listening completely, with our whole being, giving our full attention to understanding not just the words being spoken, but the person who is speaking them. When we listen in this deep, receptive way, people feel truly seen and heard, which in itself can be a deeply healing experience. Another valuable approach to relationships involves non-attachment to our fixed ideas about others. We all have a tendency to create mental images of the people in our lives. She's always so critical. He never listens to me. They're so self-centered. These images may contain a kernel of truth, but they also severely limit our ability to see the person freshly in each new moment and to recognize their capacity for change and growth. By letting go of these fixed notions and meeting others with beginner's mind, a mind open and receptive to new possibilities, rather than filled with preconceptions, we create space for genuine encounter and for the relationship to evolve. This doesn't mean ignoring problematic behaviors, but rather addressing them without reducing the whole, complex person to those behaviors. Perhaps most importantly, it reminds us that our interactions with others often reveal our own mind states as much as they do anything about the other person. When we find ourselves irritated by someone's behavior, the irritation arises in our consciousness. By noticing our own reactions without immediately acting them out, we gain valuable insight into our own patterns and conditioning, and we create more freedom and choice in how we respond. This internal awareness is the true foundation of skillful, compassionate relationship. As we become more conscious of our own reactions, projections, desires, and fears, we naturally bring greater clarity, wisdom, and freedom to all our interactions with others. Conflict resolution. Conflict is an inevitable part of human life. Whether between individuals, within families, in workplaces, or between nations, differences in needs, values, and perceptions naturally lead to tension and disagreement. It doesn't offer a magical way to eliminate conflict entirely, but it provides deep insights that can help us approach conflict with greater wisdom, patience, and compassion. One key insight is that conflict often escalates when we become overly identified with our positions and see them as extensions of our very self. A simple disagreement becomes personal, a threat to our identity or self-worth. From this reactive, defended state, we tend to become either defensive or aggressive, and genuine resolution becomes much more difficult. Practice helps us to recognize that our opinions and positions, while they may be important, are not who we are. They are just mental formations. By learning to hold them more lightly, we create psychological space for genuine dialogue. We can listen to differing viewpoints without feeling personally threatened, and we can advocate for our own perspective without needing to win at all costs. Another valuable approach is to look beneath the surface positions to the underlying needs and concerns that are driving them. Often, people with seemingly opposed positions actually share common, deeper values or needs. By focusing on these shared concerns, safety, respect, belonging, understanding, rather than on the surface disagreements, we can often find creative, unexpected solutions that address everyone's essential requirements. It also encourages us to be attentively aware of the physical and emotional sensations that arise within us during conflict. When we feel threatened or angry, our bodies respond with increased tension, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, and other stress responses. By noticing these reactions in our body without being completely controlled by them. Perhaps by taking a few conscious deep breaths or momentarily shifting our attention to the physical sensations, we can access more of our innate intelligence and compassion, rather than reacting from pure fight or flight instinct. The practice of non-judgment is particularly valuable in conflict situations. This doesn't mean abandoning discernment or ethical standards. It means suspending the automatic, often harsh, categorization of people and actions as good or bad, right or wrong. By staying present with the complexity and nuance of a situation, rather than hastily reducing it to simplistic judgments, we can see more clearly and respond more skillfully. Sometimes, the wisest initial response to conflict is simply to create space, to pause rather than react immediately. As one saying wisely puts it, when in doubt, don't. A period of reflection, perhaps including a few minutes of meditation or a quiet walk, can allow for a more considered, compassionate response to emerge, rather than a reactive, often regrettable one. In community conflicts, it emphasizes the importance of creating processes where all voices can be heard with respect and attention. This doesn't mean that everyone will get what they want, but that everyone feels their perspective has been genuinely considered. When people feel truly heard, they are often much more willing to accept outcomes that are different from their initial preferences. Perhaps most fundamentally, it approaches conflict with a deep recognition of our shared humanity and fundamental interdependence. Even those with whom we strongly disagree are, like us, seeking happiness and trying to avoid suffering. This basic recognition doesn't automatically resolve differences, but it does provide a crucial foundation of mutual respect and compassion that makes genuine resolution and reconciliation more possible. Mental well-being. The relationship between this practice and mental health is complex and nuanced. While it is certainly not a replacement for professional mental health care when it is needed, its insights and practices can contribute significantly to our overall psychological well-being. At its core, it offers a profound understanding of the human mind, how it works, how it creates suffering for itself, and how it can be transformed through the practices of meditation and mindful attention to daily activities. Through practice, we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without being completely identified with them or controlled by them. This capacity for mindful observation creates what psychologists call metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe our own mental processes from a slight distance. This awareness gives us more choice, more freedom, in how we respond to our thoughts and emotions, rather than reacting to them automatically and unconsciously. For example, when anxiety arises, instead of being completely caught in the anxious thoughts and physical sensations, we can learn to notice, anxiety is present, and relate to it with some spaciousness and curiosity. Similarly, when negative self-talk emerges, "I'm not good enough, I always mess things up," we can learn to recognize these as passing thoughts, rather than accepting them as absolute truths about ourselves. Practice also helps us develop greater acceptance of our difficult experiences. Rather than fighting against uncomfortable emotions or trying to escape them through distraction, busyness, or substance use, we learn to be with them with a kind, allowing awareness. This doesn't mean passively enduring suffering or becoming a doormat. It means meeting our experience in a way that doesn't unnecessarily amplify or prolong our suffering. The concept of non-attachment is particularly valuable for mental health. Many psychological difficulties involve becoming overly attached to certain thoughts, self-concepts, or desired outcomes. When life doesn't match our fixed ideas about how things should be, we suffer. By learning to hold our thoughts, stories, and expectations more lightly, we become more flexible, more adaptable, and more resilient in the face of life's inevitable changes and challenges. Its emphasis on present moment awareness can be especially helpful for those struggling with rumination, being stuck in the past, or worry, being anxious about the future. These mental patterns can be incredibly draining and debilitating. By gently, repeatedly returning our attention to the direct experience of the present moment, the feeling of the breath, the sensations in the body, the sounds around us, we can interrupt these unproductive thought cycles and reconnect with the simple, direct experience of being alive right now. The integration of mind and body in practice is another aspect that supports mental health. Our mental states are intimately connected with physical sensations in the body. Body-based practices like mindful breathing, walking meditation, or mindful movement help us work with psychological challenges at the somatic level, rather than just at the cognitive level. Sometimes, calming the body is the most direct way to calm the mind. For those dealing with specific mental health conditions, approaches like mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, and acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, have been clinically validated as effective treatments. These approaches combine traditional insights with modern psychological understanding to help people address conditions like depression, anxiety disorders, and stress-related conditions. It's important to note, however, that practice is not appropriate for everyone at all times. People experiencing acute psychosis, severe depressive episodes, or other serious mental health crises may need other forms of support and stabilization before meditation becomes helpful. And even for those for whom meditation is generally beneficial, certain difficult emotions or traumatic memories may arise during practice that require additional, professional support from a therapist or counselor. The wisest approach is to see practice and professional mental health care not as alternatives, but as complementary resources that can work together synergistically. Many people find that combining a consistent meditation practice with therapy, and when appropriate, medication, provides the most comprehensive and effective support for their psychological well-being. In the modern world, as it has traveled from east to west and from traditional to modern contexts, it has both transformed and been transformed by its new environments. Today, its practices and insights are being applied in settings the ancient masters could never have imagined, from corporate boardrooms to scientific laboratories, from prison cells to hospital wards. This global adaptation naturally raises important questions about cultural adaptation, authenticity, and the essential essence. Is it still the same when it is removed from its traditional Asian cultural context? What elements are essential to preserve, and what can be wisely modified to fit new cultural environments? There is no simple, single answer to these questions. But we can observe some of the significant ways it is evolving in the modern world. One significant development is the secularization of its practices, particularly meditation. Programs like mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT, have skillfully extracted meditation techniques from their religious context and presented them in scientific and therapeutic frameworks. This secularization has made meditation accessible to many people who might be uncomfortable with or skeptical of traditional religious elements. It has also facilitated a huge amount of scientific research on the effects of meditation, with hundreds of studies now documenting its benefits for physical and mental health. However, some critics argue that this secular approach can sometimes reduce it to a mere self-improvement technique, losing the deeper spiritual, ethical, and philosophical dimensions of the tradition. Another modern development is the democratization of access. Traditionally, it was primarily practiced by monks in monasteries, with lay people having limited access to the deeper teachings and intensive training. Today, centers and meditation programs are available to people of all backgrounds, regardless of their ability or desire to commit to a monastic life. While this has made it more widely accessible, it also raises questions about the depth of practice and the role of sustained, intensive training in realizing its deeper potentials. Technology has also profoundly influenced modern practice. Meditation apps, online courses, and virtual communities make resources available to people who might not have access to local teachers or groups. These digital adaptations offer incredible convenience and accessibility, but they may also lack the direct, person-to-person transmission and the embodied community experience that has been central to the tradition for centuries. Social engagement is another area where modern practice is evolving. While traditional practice has sometimes been criticized for focusing on individual liberation at the expense of social justice, many contemporary practitioners are explicitly connecting their practice to activism and social change. Organizations and movements seek to apply insights to collective challenges like environmental degradation, economic inequality, and systemic discrimination. Perhaps the most significant aspect of its modern evolution is its fruitful encounter with Western psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy. This cross-fertilization has enriched both the tradition and the Western understanding of consciousness, cognition, and human potential. Concepts that might once have seemed mystical or esoteric, like non-duality, emptiness, or the constructed nature of the self, now find interesting parallels in scientific research on brain function and cognitive processes. As it continues to evolve in the modern world, the challenge is to preserve its essential insights and transformative power while allowing it to take new forms that are appropriate and effective in different cultural contexts. This requires a delicate balance, neither clinging rigidly to traditional forms nor diluting the practice to the point where its depth and power are lost. The most promising approach may be what it itself teaches, to hold tradition neither too tightly nor too loosely. To approach new developments with both respect for ancient wisdom and openness to fresh insights, and to focus not on abstract questions of authenticity, but on the practical, vital matter of what genuinely helps people to wake up and to live with wisdom and compassion. Koans, the art of the impossible question. One of the most distinctive and fascinating aspects of practice, particularly in one school, is the use of koans. These are enigmatic questions, statements, or short stories that are designed to propel the student beyond logical, conceptual thinking into a direct, non-conceptual insight or awakening. A koan is not a riddle with a clever, logical solution. Nor is it mere nonsense designed purely to frustrate the intellect, though it certainly has that effect. Rather, it is a precision tool, crafted over centuries, to create a particular kind of psychic crisis. A crisis of meaning that, when fully experienced and endured, can open suddenly into a breakthrough of understanding. Famous koans include, "What is the sound of one hand clapping? What was your original face before your parents were born? Does a dog have Buddha nature?" And the shocking, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him." When a student is given a koan, they are expected to meditate on it day and night, bringing their whole being, not just their thinking mind, to this impossible question. All the usual approaches, logical analysis, metaphorical interpretation, philosophical speculation, fail to crack the koan. That is precisely the point. The koan is designed to exhaust the mind's usual problem-solving strategies, creating a state of great doubt, where one's entire framework of understanding is called into question. In this fertile state of not knowing, something new can emerge, a direct, immediate, non-conceptual insight. The Japanese term for this breakthrough is kensho, seeing into one's nature, or satori, sudden awakening. In traditional training, the student regularly meets with the teacher in a private interview to present their understanding of the koan. The teacher, through years of experience, can immediately discern whether the student has had a genuine, embodied insight or is still caught in conceptual thinking or imitation. No explanation or interpretation, no matter how clever or philosophically sophisticated, will satisfy the teacher. Only when the student embodies the truth of the koan, when they become the koan, will the teacher recognize their realization. Once a student passes one koan, they are given another. In traditional training, a student might work through hundreds of koans over many years, each one addressing a different aspect of awakening and its practical expression in daily life. The koan tradition highlights a key aspect, that ultimate truth cannot be captured in concepts or conveyed through words and letters. It must be directly experienced for oneself. As one saying puts it, don't mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. All teachings, including koans, are merely pointers to a reality that transcends all language. This doesn't mean that it is anti-intellectual or opposed to rational thought. Rather, it recognizes both the value and the inherent limitations of conceptual understanding. Concepts are useful, necessary tools for navigating the relative, conventional world. But they can never capture the absolute, ultimate nature of reality. Koan practice is a powerful method for helping us recognize when we are mistaking our conceptual maps for the territory itself. In our modern world, where we are constantly bombarded with information, explanations, and opinions, the practice of working with a koan offers a radical alternative. It is an invitation to rest in not knowing, to become comfortable with mystery, and to discover what lies beyond our familiar conceptual constructions of reality. Stories and their meanings. Teachings are often transmitted not through abstract philosophical treatises, but through vivid, often paradoxical, stories. These stories typically feature interactions between masters and students, highlighting moments of awakening or illustrating key aspects of wisdom in a memorable, embodied way. Let's explore a few classic stories and their deeper meanings. A university professor once went to visit a famous master. While the master quietly served tea, the professor talked on and on about his ideas and understandings. The master poured the visitor's cup full, and then he kept on pouring. The professor watched the tea overflow until he could no longer restrain himself. "Stop. The cup is over full. No more will go in." "Like this cup," the master said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you unless you first empty your cup?" This simple, powerful story illustrates a fundamental requirement for all genuine learning. The willingness to set aside our preconceptions, our certainty, and our accumulated knowledge, and to approach a subject with a beginner's mind. When we are already filled with our own ideas, judgments, and beliefs, there is no room for new understanding to enter. The tea represents wisdom, but it could equally represent any form of deep learning or personal growth. The story is a timeless reminder that true learning begins with humility, openness, and a willingness to not know. A man traveling across a field encountered a tiger. He fled, the tiger chasing after him. Coming to a precipice, he caught hold of the root of a wild vine and swung himself down over the edge. The tiger sniffed at him from above. Trembling, the man looked down to where, far below, another tiger was waiting to eat him. Only the vine sustained him. Two mice, one white and one black, little by little started to gnaw away at the vine. The man saw a luscious strawberry near him. Grasping the vine with one hand, he plucked the strawberry with the other. How sweet it tasted! This vivid, haunting story captures the human condition with remarkable economy and power. The tigers represent the past and future, the regrets, shames, and memories that chase us from behind, and the fears, anxieties, and uncertainties that wait for us ahead. The mice, gnawing relentlessly at the vine, represent the passing of time, gradually bringing us closer to our inevitable death. Yet, in the very midst of this precarious, life-threatening situation, there is a strawberry, the present moment in all its potential richness and aliveness. The story does not deny the reality of danger, difficulty, or mortality. Rather, it suggests that even in the most difficult circumstances, the present moment offers us the possibility of genuine appreciation, of direct experience, of being fully alive. The man's ability to fully taste the strawberry, despite his terrifying predicament, represents our own human capacity to be present, to find beauty and sweetness, even amid great challenge and uncertainty. Two monks were arguing about a flag flapping in the wind. One said, "The flag is moving." The other said, "No, the wind is moving." They argued back and forth, unable to agree. A great master happened to be passing by. He overheard their debate and told them, "Not the wind, not the flag. Mind is moving." This deceptively simple story moves through three levels of understanding. The first monk sees only the most obvious surface perception: the flag is moving. The second monk has a slightly subtler view. He recognizes that it is actually the wind that is moving the flag. But the master points to something even more fundamental, that both the flag and the wind are experienced within, and are movements of consciousness itself. Without a perceiving mind, there would be no experience of flag or wind at all. The story invites us to look beyond surface appearances to the deeper nature of all experience. All perception, all phenomena, happen within consciousness. Yet, We typically attribute reality and solidity to the objects of perception, while completely overlooking the consciousness in which they appear. This recognition points toward the non-dual nature of reality, where subject and object, inside and outside, are not ultimately separate. The Master Zuigen called out to himself every day, "Master," and then he would answer, "Yes, sir." Then he would say, "Be awake. Be alert," and respond, "Yes, sir." And he would add, "Don't be deceived by others, any day, any time." To which he would reply, "No, I won't." This humorous, seemingly strange story highlights the essential practice of self-awareness. Zuigen's daily dialogue with himself represents the practice of mindfulness, the capacity to observe our own thoughts, emotions, and actions from a place of awareness, rather than being completely, unconsciously identified with them. By calling himself Master, and then responding, Zuigen embodies both the aspect of awareness that can observe, the witness, and that which is observed, the contents of consciousness. His self-admonishment to stay awake and not be deceived shows that this is not a one-time event, but an ongoing, moment-to-moment practice of remembering our true nature and not getting lost in the dream of separate selfhood. There once was a master named Hakuin who was widely honored for his pure life. Many people came to him for teachings. Then one day, a beautiful girl who lived nearby became pregnant. Her angry parents demanded to know who the father was. At first, she refused to confess, but after much harassment, she named Hakuin. In great anger, the parents stormed to the master's door, berating him in front of his students and neighbors. "Is that so?" was all he would say in response. After the child was born, it was brought to Hakuin. By this time, he had lost his reputation entirely, but he took good care of the child. He obtained milk and everything else the little one needed. A year later, the girl mother could stand it no longer. She told her parents the truth, that the real father was a young man who worked in the fish market. The mother and father of the girl went at once to Hakuin to ask his forgiveness, to apologize at length, and to get the child back. Hakuin was willing. In yielding the child, all he said was, "Is that so?" This powerful story illustrates several key principles with stunning clarity. Hakuin's simple response, "Is that so?" shows a mind completely free from reactivity. He neither defended his reputation nor expressed anger or resentment at the false accusation. His willingness to care for the child, despite the personal cost, demonstrates compassion in action, putting the child's immediate needs above concern for his own social standing. The story challenges our normal, deep-seated fixation on being perceived accurately by others and our powerful tendency to defend ourselves against criticism and blame. Hakuin's equanimity in the face of both condemnation and later praise shows a remarkable freedom from what are called the 8 worldly winds, praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute. The cosmic body. It is often portrayed as a stripped-down, minimalist form, focused entirely on direct experience rather than elaborate cosmology or metaphysics. While this emphasis on immediacy is certainly characteristic, it doesn't mean that it lacks profound philosophical depth. One of its most important philosophical foundations is the concept of the Dharmakaya, often translated as the cosmic body, or the truth body. This does not refer to the physical body of the historical founder, but to the ultimate nature of reality itself. In the broader tradition, the awakened one is understood to have three bodies or aspects. The transformation body, the physical, historical teacher. The body of mutual enjoyment, the teacher as experienced in visions, dreams, and deep meditation. A more subtle, radiant manifestation. The truth body, the ultimate reality or awakened nature that is the true nature of all things. It is formless, timeless, and beyond all conceptualization. The Dharmakaya is not separate from the world of form, but is its very essence. It is like the ocean in relation to waves. Each individual wave is a temporary form, a particular phenomenon, but it is never separate from the underlying ocean, which is the Dharmakaya. This understanding of the Dharmakaya relates closely to the core teachings of emptiness and dependent origination. Everything that exists does so interdependently, without any fixed, independent, separate essence. This emptiness of separate self-nature is not a vacuum or a nihilistic void. It is rather the infinite potential, the fertile ground, from which all forms arise. Poetry, painting, and other arts often attempt to evoke this understanding of the Dharmakaya. The empty space in a painting, the silence between the notes in music, or the pause in a poem, these might point toward this formless reality that paradoxically gives rise to all forms. In everyday practice, the Dharmakaya is not something to be sought outside of our ordinary experience. Rather, it is to be recognized as the very nature of this present moment, the suchness or thusness of reality, when it is perceived without the filters of conceptual thinking and separation. As a master put it, if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? This teaching points to the Dharmakaya as not distant or separate, but as the very fabric of our immediate experience, when seen with clear, unobstructed eyes. The cosmic game of hide and seek. One beautiful way to understand it, and indeed, the broader tradition, is as a response to a kind of cosmic game of hide and seek that we are all playing, whether we know it or not. This game begins with our true nature, what we might call awakened nature or the Dharmakaya, hiding from itself by pretending to be separate individuals with limited awareness and personal histories. In this grand, cosmic game, the infinite, boundless consciousness that is our true nature pretends to forget itself. It takes on the convincing disguise of being a separate entity, a person with a name, a history, a personality, and personal concerns, located inside a physical body and fundamentally separate from the rest of the universe. This disguise, this masquerade, is so convincing that we completely forget it's a game. We believe with absolute conviction that we are indeed these separate entities. And this belief becomes the foundation for all our suffering. From the sense of being a separate, fragile self comes fear, desire, competition, loneliness, and all the other forms of psychological pain that humans experience. The Founder's Great Awakening was simply the recognition of this game for what it is. He saw through the disguise and remembered his true nature. Not as a separate individual, but as the boundless awareness in which all experience arises. This realization didn't make him less human. Rather, it allowed him to live his humanity more fully, freely, and compassionately, without the constrictions and suffering that come from mistaken identity. Practice, in its essence, is about seeing through this cosmic masquerade. Through meditation, koans, mindful living, and other practices, we gradually, or sometimes suddenly, recognize our true nature. We discover that what we have been seeking all along, peace, wholeness, freedom, is actually what we already are, when we stop pretending to be something less, something separate. This insight is often described as waking up, as if from a long dream in which we were playing a limited, separate character. The awakening doesn't destroy the character. We still have our personality, our body, our preferences, our relationships. But we no longer mistake the character for our fundamental identity. We can play our human role with more freedom, creativity, and compassion, because we are no longer trapped in it. In this light, enlightenment is not the achievement of some special, exalted state, nor is it the acquisition of supernatural powers. It is simply the recognition of what has always been the case, that our true nature is not a separate entity, but the boundless awareness in which all experience appears. As the saying goes, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. The activities don't change, but our relationship to them, our understanding of who we are, transforms completely. And scientific understanding. In recent decades, there has been growing interest and fruitful dialogue in the relationship between insights and modern scientific understanding. While they arise from very different cultural contexts and employ radically different methods, they can be seen as complementary approaches to understanding the nature of reality and consciousness. One area of particular overlap is the scientific investigation of consciousness and its relationship to the brain. Neuroscience has made tremendous progress in mapping the neural correlates of various mental states, including those associated with meditation. Studies using fMRI and EEG have shown that long-term meditation practice can lead to measurable changes in brain structure and function, such as increased gray matter density in areas associated with attention, emotional regulation, and self-awareness. This provides scientific support for the claim that sustained, disciplined practice can genuinely transform the mind. However, science still faces what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. How and why physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective, qualitative experience, what it feels like to be you. Here, it offers a perspective that challenges some basic assumptions of the materialist scientific approach. Rather than seeing consciousness as merely a product or epiphenomenon of the brain, it suggests that consciousness is fundamental, and that the physical world, including the brain, appears within it. This view finds interesting parallels in certain interpretations of quantum physics, which suggest that the observer plays a crucial role in the manifestation of physical reality. The famous double-slit experiment, for instance, demonstrates that at the quantum level, the act of observation affects what is observed, calling into question the strict subject-object division that classical science assumed. Its emphasis on direct, first-person experience also offers a valuable complement to the third-person, objective methodology of science. While science aims for knowledge that is objective, verifiable, and independent of any particular observer, it points to the irreducible reality of first-person consciousness itself. No matter how thoroughly we map the neural correlates of the taste of chocolate, the experience itself, what it feels like to taste chocolate, remains accessible only through direct, subjective awareness. Another area of resonance is the understanding of interdependence and interconnectedness. Ecology, systems theory, and network science all emphasize the deeply interconnected, relational nature of all phenomena, showing how elements of complex systems cannot be understood in isolation from the whole. This scientific perspective beautifully echoes the teaching of dependent origination. That nothing exists independently, but only in relation to countless other causes and conditions. Climate science, in particular, has made it painfully clear how human activities affect the entire planetary system, underscoring in a very concrete way our profound embeddedness in the web of life. This scientific understanding of ecological interdependence provides powerful empirical support for the intuition of non-separation from nature. The dialogue can be mutually beneficial. For the tradition, engagement with science can help to distinguish between genuine, universal insights and cultural accretions or superstitions that may have become attached to the tradition over centuries. For science, it offers a rigorous first-person methodology for investigating consciousness and a profound perspective that questions hidden assumptions about the nature of observation, reality, and the knower. Rather than seeing them as competing, contradictory accounts of reality, we might more fruitfully view them as different, complementary facets of human inquiry, each illuminating aspects of existence that the other might miss. One explores the objective, measurable world, the other, the subjective, experiential world. Both are essential for a complete understanding of our human situation. Ethical dimensions. While often associated primarily with meditation and philosophical insights, it also contains profound ethical dimensions. These are not based on commandments from a divine authority, but emerge naturally from the realization of interdependence and from the direct experience of compassion that arises when the illusion of separation falls away. In traditional contexts, ethics is discussed in terms of precepts, guidelines for speech and action that support awakening and reduce suffering. The most basic set includes the 5 precepts for lay practitioners: not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not lying, and not using intoxicants in ways that cloud awareness. These are not framed as absolute, rigid rules, but as training principles, practical guidelines that help create conditions, both internally and externally, that are conducive to awakening. What distinguishes the approach to ethics is its emphasis on spontaneous, appropriate response, rather than mere adherence to fixed rules. Once the delusion of separate selfhood begins to dissolve through practice, compassionate, ethical action naturally and spontaneously emerges. As one saying puts it, the compassionate heart arises from the realization of emptiness. This doesn't mean that practitioners are exempt from ethical guidelines or can do whatever they feel like in the name of spontaneity. Rather, it suggests that true, authentic ethical action comes from deep insight and clear seeing, rather than from mere conformity to external standards. The precepts are seen not as restrictions imposed from outside, but as natural expressions of our own awakened nature. In his essay on social action, a teacher wrote, "The way is not about developing a social consciousness. It is about revealing the social consciousness that has been there from the very beginning." This perspective challenges both conventional religious morality, which often emphasizes obedience to divine commandments, and secular relativism, which may reduce ethics to personal preference or social convention. It suggests that there are objective ethical truths, but they are discovered through direct realization of our interconnected nature, rather than through abstract reasoning or appeal to external authority. This has practical implications for how we approach ethical questions in our lives. Rather than asking only, "What rule should I follow in this situation?" an approach might ask, "What action would express clear seeing and genuine compassion in this moment, with these people, in these circumstances?" This doesn't make ethical decisions simpler. In fact, it often reveals their profound complexity. But it grounds our ethics in direct experience and relational awareness, rather than in abstract principles alone. One beautiful manifestation of ethics is the Bodhisattva vow, the commitment to work for the liberation and well-being of all beings. This vow expresses the deep recognition that my well-being and yours are not separate, that the suffering of others is not fundamentally different from my own suffering. It is not a matter of self-sacrifice, but of recognizing that the division between self and other is not absolute. In contemporary contexts, ethics has been applied to a wide range of issues, including environmental protection, social justice, peace activism, and economic ethics. Organizations and movements explicitly connect meditation practice with social action, seeing them not as separate activities, but as different expressions of the same awakened awareness. The approach to ethics doesn't provide simple, ready-made answers to complex moral questions. But it does offer a profound perspective that can complement other ethical frameworks. By grounding ethics in the direct realization of interconnection, rather than in abstract principles or divine commands, it helps us to respond to the ethical challenges of our lives with both wisdom and compassion, with both clarity and heart. Beyond religion and atheism. Is it a religion? Is it compatible with science and secular worldviews? These questions have generated countless debates, particularly as it has spread to Western countries with different cultural and intellectual traditions. The truth is that it doesn't fit neatly into Western categories of religion versus non-religion or theism versus atheism. It contains elements that might be considered religious in the Western sense: rituals, monasticism, concepts of rebirth and karma. But it doesn't center on belief in a creator God or in divine revelation in the way that the Abrahamic religions do. This ambiguity has led some modern interpreters to present it as a form of non-religious spirituality, or even as a purely psychological or philosophical system that is compatible with any religious belief or with none at all. While this framing has made it more accessible to many secular Westerners, it can also involve a selective emphasis on certain aspects while downplaying or reinterpreting others. The founder himself rejected both of the dominant religious paradigms of his time: eternalism, the belief in an eternal soul or self that survives death unchanged, and nihilism, the belief that death is the complete, final end of the person, with no continuing consequences. Instead, he taught a middle way that recognized the reality of moral causation, karma, and continuity between lives, without positing an unchanging self or soul. This nuanced position doesn't align neatly with either conventional religious views or materialist atheism. It points to something beyond both, a perspective that recognizes the ultimate emptiness of all conceptual positions, while affirming the reality of interdependence and the law of moral cause and effect. In this light, we might understand it as a religion of no religion, a path that uses religious forms, meditation, ritual, community, to point to a reality that is beyond all concepts, including religious ones. The purpose of practice is not to confirm or deny religious beliefs, but to experience directly the nature of reality, beyond belief altogether. This approach doesn't mean that it is anti-religious or that it views traditional religious forms as unimportant. Rather, it recognizes both the value and the limitations of all religious expression. As one teacher put it, the finger pointing to the moon is not the moon, but without the finger, you might not notice the moon. The forms are helpful, necessary pointers, but we must not cling to the pointer and forget what it is pointing to. For modern practitioners navigating this territory, there is no single, right, approach. Some may find it valuable to engage fully with the religious dimensions, including its rituals, devotional practices, and traditional cosmology. Others may focus primarily on the meditation practice and philosophical insights, while setting aside elements that seem culturally specific or metaphysically speculative. What ultimately matters is not whether we categorize it as religious or non-religious, but whether the practices and insights genuinely help us to wake up from our delusions and to live with greater wisdom, compassion, and freedom. In this sense, it is profoundly pragmatic rather than dogmatic. It is concerned more with what works to reduce suffering than with doctrinal correctness or philosophical consistency. This pragmatic approach aligns perfectly with the founder's famous parable of the poisoned arrow. When questioned about metaphysical matters, like whether the world is eternal or finite, whether the soul is identical with the body or different, what happens to an awakened person after death, the founder compared such inquiries to a man who has been shot with a poisoned arrow. Instead of letting a doctor remove the arrow, the man insists on first knowing who shot the arrow, what kind of wood it is made from, what feathers are used, etc. He would die before getting his questions answered. The urgent matter, he said, is removing the arrow and treating the wound, the problem of suffering, not satisfying philosophical or metaphysical curiosity. In our contemporary context, where religious and secular worldviews often seem locked in conflict, it offers a refreshing, radical alternative. It neither fully accepts nor rejects either position, but points to a direct experience that transcends our conceptual divisions altogether. And death. Death remains one of humanity's greatest mysteries and most persistent fears. Nearly all religious and philosophical traditions attempt to address this ultimate human concern, and it is no exception. However, the approach to death differs significantly from many other perspectives. Rather than offering comforting beliefs about an afterlife or an eternal soul, it encourages a direct, unflinching confrontation with the reality of impermanence. This is done not through morbid obsession, but through the steady, mindful observation of the constant arising and passing away of all phenomena, our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations, and eventually, our own bodies. In monasteries, monks traditionally sleep with their heads on small, wooden pillows. These pillows might contain a reminder of death, perhaps a verse about impermanence, or even, in some traditions, an image of the monk as a skeleton. This practice isn't meant to be morbid or frightening. It is a practical way of keeping a clear awareness of mortality present, preventing the spiritual complacency that so easily arises when we ignore or deny the reality of death. Masters often emphasize that confronting death directly leads not to despair or nihilism, but to a more authentic, appreciative, and vibrant relationship with life. When we truly realize, at a gut level, that this precious human existence will definitely end, and that we do not know when, each moment becomes infinitely more valuable and vivid. As one saying enigmatically puts it, die before you die, and be completely dead. Then do whatever you want. It's all good. This shocking instruction points to a psychological or spiritual death, the death of the ego, the separate self-sense. This ego death paradoxically leads to more vibrant, fearless living. By dying before you die, you release attachment to your persona, your self-image, your story, experiencing the profound freedom that comes when you no longer need to constantly maintain and defend a particular identity. The tradition contains many stories of masters who faced their own physical death with remarkable equanimity, clarity, and even humor. For example, a master was diagnosed with terminal cancer. When a student asked him, with great concern, about facing death, he replied simply, "I am not dying. I am not living. I am just here." This response reflects the perspective that our true nature, awakened nature, transcends the conventional categories of life and death. This doesn't mean that practitioners feel no sadness about dying or about losing loved ones. Grief is a natural, human response to loss. Rather, it suggests that beneath the natural waves of grief, there can be a deeper, unshakable acceptance and peace, based on direct insight into the nature of existence itself. As a poet wrote after the death of his beloved nephew, "The world of dew is a world of dew. And yet. These simple, poignant lines capture both the clear recognition of impermanence, the world of dew that vanishes with the morning sun, and the human heart's natural, unresolvable response to loss. The trailing and yet. For those caring for the dying, it offers valuable guidance. Rather than turning away from the reality of death or trying to maintain a false, strained cheerfulness, it encourages simple, grounded presence. Being fully with the dying person, without denial, without evasion, without a lot of words. This quality of quiet, courageous presence can be more comforting than any words of reassurance, and it allows for authentic, heart-to-heart connection in life's final chapter. In practical terms, it suggests that the way to prepare for death is not by accumulating beliefs about what happens afterward, but by a gradual, lifelong process of letting go of possessions, of roles, of unfinished business, and ultimately, of the notion of being a separate self. This process of releasing attachment doesn't happen all at once, but gradually, through consistent, mindful practice. Whether or not there is some form of continuity of consciousness after physical death is a question on which various traditions hold different views. The approach tends to be pragmatic. It emphasizes working with the mind in this life. By developing awareness of our true nature, which is beyond the conventional self, we establish a perspective from which death appears not as an absolute end, but as another transformation in the endless, dynamic dance of form and emptiness. Emptiness, the heart of the wisdom. At the very heart of the wisdom lies the concept of sunyata, emptiness. This is perhaps the most misunderstood, yet most profound, teaching. Far from meaning nothingness or a void in the nihilistic sense, emptiness refers to the lack of inherent, independent existence in all phenomena. Everything we experience, objects, people, thoughts, emotions, even our sense of self, arises dependently, in relation to countless other causes and conditions. Nothing exists in isolation or has a fixed, unchanging, separate essence. This absence of independent, own being, is what emptiness points to. A classic analogy for understanding emptiness is a chariot. If we take apart a chariot, removing the wheels, the axle, the frame, the reins, and so on, at what point does it cease to be a chariot? There is no chariot essence that exists independently of its components and our conceptual designation. Yet, the chariot functions perfectly well as a conventional reality. Similarly, our sense of having a permanent, separate self doesn't hold up under close, experiential examination. Yet, we function effectively in the conventional world. The realization of emptiness does not negate conventional reality, it simply places it in a larger, more accurate context. It's like recognizing that while the lines of longitude and latitude on a map are useful conventions for navigation, they don't actually exist on the physical Earth. This recognition doesn't make the map useless, it simply prevents us from mistaking the map for the territory itself. In practice, emptiness is not just a philosophical concept to be understood intellectually, it is a direct experience to be realized through sustained meditation and inquiry. Practitioners may experience moments where the usual, solid boundaries between self and world, subject and object, inside and outside, temporarily dissolve. These experiences of non-duality offer a direct taste of reality beyond our usual conceptual frameworks. The approach to emptiness is not to analyze it intellectually, but to perceive it directly, immediately. As the Heart Sutra, one of the most important texts, puts it so paradoxically, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. This famous statement points to the inseparable, non-dual relationship between the conventional world of form and the ultimate truth of emptiness. They are not two separate realities, but two perspectives on the same, single reality. Understanding emptiness has profound practical implications for how we live our lives. When we recognize that our identity is not a fixed, solid, separate thing, we can hold our self-image much more lightly. We become less defensive, less driven to constantly prove ourselves, more open to change, learning, and growth. We see that our boundaries are more permeable than we thought, allowing for greater intimacy with others and with the world. Emotionally, the insight into emptiness can be profoundly liberating. So much of our psychological suffering stems from treating impermanent, dependently arisen phenomena, thoughts, feelings, situations, as if they were solid, permanent, and independently existing. When we see through this fundamental misperception, we can release a tremendous amount of unnecessary struggle and pain. For example, if I receive criticism and I take it as defining who I really am, I am a failure. I create significant suffering for myself. If I can recognize that both I and failure are empty concepts, useful conventions in certain contexts, but not absolute, solid truths, the sting of the criticism can diminish considerably. I can learn from the feedback without being defined or crushed by it. This doesn't mean living in a state of detached indifference or emotional flatness. Paradoxically, when we understand emptiness, we can often engage more fully with life, because we are not constantly trying to protect a fragile, solid-seeming self. We can be more spontaneous, more responsive, more fully present to what each moment brings. A teacher coined the term interbeing to express the truth of emptiness in more positive, affirmative terms, emphasizing interconnection rather than absence. A flower is empty of independent existence precisely because it is with sunshine, rain, soil, air, and countless other elements. Far from diminishing the flower, this radical interconnection is what allows it to exist at all. Similarly, our own existence is possible only because of innumerable causes and conditions, from our parents and ancestors, to the air we breathe, the food we eat, the communities that sustain us, and the entire, vast web of life. Understanding emptiness in this way leads not to nihilism, but to profound gratitude, care, and responsibility for the whole of which we are an inseparable part. The path of not seeking. One of the most distinctive and paradoxical aspects is its emphasis on not seeking or non-attainment. While most spiritual paths focus on achieving something, enlightenment, salvation, inner peace, moral perfection, it often turns this seeking on its head, emphasizing that there is fundamentally nothing to attain that isn't already fully present. This creates a fascinating, and often frustrating, predicament for the student. If enlightenment or awakened nature is already present as our true nature, why practice at all? Yet, if we don't practice, we seem to remain caught in delusion and suffering. So we practice, but not in order to get something we lack, rather, we practice to uncover or realize what has been present and shining all along. As a master put it, if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? This statement points to the immediacy and accessibility of what we are seeking. It is not a distant goal to be achieved after years of arduous effort, but the very nature of this present moment, when it is seen clearly, without obstruction. The approach to this paradox is sometimes called effortless effort, or the action of non-action. It is not about straining and striving to reach a goal, but about allowing our true nature to manifest spontaneously, without interference from our conditioned patterns of thinking, wanting, and self-clinging. This doesn't mean that practice is easy or that no effort or discipline is involved. Especially in the beginning stages, considerable effort may be needed to establish a consistent meditation practice, to work with challenging emotions, and to break deeply ingrained habitual patterns. But the quality of this effort is different from the striving for achievement. It is more like the effort involved in letting go than in grasping. It is the effort to be present, to be aware, to not interfere. A famous story illustrates this perfectly. A student asked his teacher, "I've been at this monastery for 3 years, but I feel I haven't made any progress. Perhaps I should leave." The teacher asked, "What do you expect to achieve?" The student replied, "I want to become awakened." The teacher picked up a tile from the floor and began polishing it intently with his robe. When the student, puzzled, asked what he was doing, the teacher said, "I'm polishing this tile to make a mirror." The student protested, "But no amount of polishing will turn a tile into a mirror." The teacher replied, "And no amount of sitting in meditation will turn you into something you already are." This story highlights the fundamental futility of practice that is motivated by a sense of lack or inadequacy. Such practice only reinforces the very illusion of separation that it supposedly aims to overcome. True practice, authentic practice, emerges from a different place, not from wanting to become something we are not, but from allowing what we already and always are to manifest more clearly and fully. Paradoxically, when we can truly drop the agenda of self-improvement and spiritual achievement, genuine transformation becomes possible. As we release the anxious striving of the ego, our innate qualities of wisdom, compassion, and clarity can emerge more naturally and spontaneously. We discover that what we have been seeking so desperately has been present all along, like a fish searching for water, or a bird looking for air. In practical terms, the path of not seeking involves a fundamental shift in our motivation and attention. Rather than practicing to get somewhere or become someone, we practice simply to be fully, completely present with what is, right here, right now. This shift doesn't usually happen all at once. It is a gradual turning, as we again and again recognize the futility of the seeking mind and taste the profound freedom and peace of simply being. This perspective does not mean abandoning all aspirations or efforts toward positive change in our lives. Rather, it suggests approaching such efforts from a place of fundamental completeness, rather than from a sense of lack. We act not to fill a hole in ourselves, but as a natural, spontaneous expression of our already present wholeness. The path of not seeking also involves a radical acceptance of our present experience, whatever it may be. Instead of constantly evaluating our practice in terms of progress or attainment, we learn to meet each moment freshly, without imposing expectations or judgments upon it. This acceptance is not passive resignation, it is a clear-eyed, courageous recognition of reality as it is, which is the necessary starting point for any authentic, effective response. Perhaps most challenging of all, the path of not seeking requires us to let go of the very identity of being a spiritual seeker or a practitioner. As long as we think of ourselves as students working toward enlightenment, we are subtly reinforcing the very separate self-sense that the practice aims to see through. True practice happens when even the identity of practitioner drops away, leaving just this moment, in all its vivid suchness. As one saying puts it, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. The external activities may not change, but our internal relationship to them transforms completely when we stop seeking something beyond this moment and discover the profound completeness that was never, for a single instant, absent. The many faces of practice. While seated meditation is rightly considered the heart of practice, there are many other forms and expressions through which wisdom can be cultivated and embodied. These diverse practices accommodate different temperaments, life circumstances, and inclinations, while all pointing toward the same fundamental realization. Ritual and chanting. Despite its reputation for minimalism and iconoclasm, traditional monasteries incorporate extensive chanting and ritual into their daily practice. These elements are not viewed as ways to petition external forces or deities. Rather, they are seen as embodied expressions of the awakened mind. Chanting sacred texts or phrases engages the body, the breath, and the voice in a way that can quiet discursive thinking and cultivate single-pointed, concentrated attention. The rhythmic, Melodic quality of group chanting can also create a powerful sense of harmony and shared purpose that supports and deepens individual practice. Rituals like offering incense, performing bows, formal walking meditation, and ceremonial meals are all ways of bringing mindful awareness into physical movement and everyday activities. They create a container of form within which we can observe our reactions, resistance, preference, boredom, enthusiasm, and practice meeting each moment with equanimity and presence. For lay practitioners outside the monastery walls, even simple, personal rituals, like lighting a candle before sitting, or performing a small bow before meditation, can help create a conscious transition from the concerns of the day to a more contemplative, aware state. Work practice. In monasteries, work is not seen as separate from meditation, but as an integral, essential part of practice. Whether it is cooking, cleaning, gardening, or maintaining the buildings, each task is approached with the same attentive, mindful presence as formal sitting meditation. This integration of work and practice deliberately dissolves the artificial boundary we often create between spiritual activities and ordinary life. It directly challenges the tendency to seek special, peak experiences in meditation while remaining distracted, disconnected, or resentful during our practical tasks. Through work practice, we learn to bring full awareness to activities that might otherwise be done on autopilot. We discover that any activity, when approached with mindfulness, can reveal the same insights as formal meditation: the nature of impermanence, the illusion of a separate doer, the joy of effortless action. The arts. It has profoundly influenced many traditional Japanese arts, including calligraphy, ink painting, poetry, particularly haiku, flower arrangement, garden design, and the tea ceremony. These arts are not considered mere hobbies or aesthetic pursuits. They are genuine, potent paths of awakening. In the arts, technical mastery is necessary, but it is not sufficient. The true aim is to move beyond technique to a spontaneous, unself-conscious expression that emerges when the separate self momentarily drops away. This is captured in the concept of the controlled accident, creating the conditions where something unexpected, fresh, and utterly authentic can emerge. For example, in calligraphy, the practitioner might spend years mastering the brush strokes. But the most powerful, alive calligraphy happens when the calligrapher is no longer thinking about technique and instead becomes one with the brush, the ink, and the paper. What emerges then reflects not personal expression, but the direct, unmediated movement of life itself. Similarly, the tea ceremony integrates precise, choreographed forms with natural, spontaneous presence. Every movement, every arrangement of utensils, is carefully considered. Yet, the ultimate aim is to create an atmosphere where both host and guest can experience the simple, profound wonder of sharing a bowl of tea together, beyond all separation and formality. Mindful movement. While it is often associated with sitting still in meditation, various forms of mindful movement can also be powerful vehicles for practice. Traditions like Tai Chi and Qigong, and certain forms of yoga, share with it an emphasis on present moment awareness, coordination of breath and movement, and the unity of body and mind. Even conventional exercise like running, swimming, or hiking can become practice when approached with mindful attention rather than with goal-oriented striving. The key is to bring awareness to the physical sensations, the rhythm of the breath, and the immediate environment, while letting go of mental commentary and judgment. For some practitioners, body-centered practices provide a more accessible and grounding entry point than seated meditation. This is particularly true for people who experience strong restlessness or anxiety when sitting still, or for whom embodied awareness comes more naturally than abstract contemplation. Study and dialogue. While it emphasizes direct experience over intellectual understanding, the study of texts and dialogue with teachers and fellow practitioners has always played an important role in the tradition. Study provides conceptual maps and frameworks that can help orient our practice, clarify misunderstandings, and avoid common pitfalls. In traditional training, students study the discourses, commentaries, and the recorded sayings and encounters of masters. This study is not aimed at accumulating knowledge for its own sake, but at recognizing pointers to direct experience and clarifying the path of practice. Dialogue with a teacher, whether in the formal setting of private interview or in more casual conversation, allows for direct, personal interaction with someone who, ideally, embodies the teaching. The teacher doesn't simply impart information, they create conditions and offer challenges that can precipitate insight in the student. Group discussion provides opportunities to articulate one's own understanding, to learn from the perspectives of others, and to recognize common patterns and challenges in practice. By hearing how others are working with similar questions and difficulties, we often gain fresh, valuable insights into our own experience. Engaged practice. Increasingly, practitioners are exploring forms of engaged practice that explicitly connect meditation with social action and service. This approach recognizes that inner transformation and social transformation are deeply interdependent, neither is complete without the other. Engaged practice might involve applying principles to activism for environmental protection, social justice, peace, or other causes. It emphasizes bringing the qualities cultivated in meditation, presence, compassion, non-reactivity, clear seeing, into the challenging, often chaotic, realm of collective issues and social systems. Rather than seeing social engagement as a distraction from real practice, this approach recognizes that how we respond to the suffering in the world is a crucial test and expression of our understanding. If our meditation does not lead to greater compassion and more skillful action in the world, then something essential may be missing in our practice. The diverse forms of practice reflect the tradition's remarkable adaptability and pragmatism. What matters most is not the specific form itself, but the quality of awareness and presence we bring to it. Any activity, any moment, approached with full presence and openness, can become a vehicle for awakening. Common misconceptions. As it has traveled from east to west and entered popular culture, various misconceptions have arisen about its true nature and practice. Clarifying these can help newcomers approach it with more accurate expectations and a clearer understanding. Misconception 1: it is about emptying the mind. Perhaps the most common misconception is that the goal of meditation is to empty the mind of all thoughts, to achieve a blank, thoughtless state. This leads many beginners to feel frustrated and inadequate when they find they cannot stop the endless stream of thoughts, assuming they are bad at meditation. In reality, practice is not about suppressing or eliminating thoughts. It is about changing our relationship to thinking. We learn to see thoughts as mental events that arise and pass in the field of awareness, like clouds in the sky, rather than as absolute truths or commands we must obey. The aim is not a blank mind, but a spacious, aware mind that is not controlled or defined by its thought patterns. As a teacher famously put it, leave your front door and your back door open. Allow your thoughts to come and go. Just don't serve them tea. Misconception 2, it is passive or detached. Another common misunderstanding is that it cultivates a state of passive detachment or emotional indifference. Critics sometimes characterize it as promoting a withdrawal from life's challenges and responsibilities. On the contrary, genuine practice leads to greater engagement with life, not less. By releasing the anxious self-concern and clinging that normally constrict us, we become more fully available, responsive, and alive to whatever the present moment requires. Masters are typically described as remarkably present, responsive, and energetically engaged, the very opposite of detached or passive. What it does cultivate is non-attachment, which is quite different from detachment. Non-attachment means engaging fully with life without clinging to outcomes, experiences, or people. It is like playing a game wholeheartedly, while remembering that it is, after all, just a game. Misconception 3, it is anti-intellectual. Because it emphasizes direct experience over conceptual understanding and often uses unconventional, seemingly illogical methods, it is sometimes portrayed as anti-intellectual or dismissive of critical thinking. In truth, it does not reject the intellect, but it recognizes both its value and its inherent limitations. Conceptual thinking is a useful, powerful tool for navigating the relative, conventional world. But it can never capture the absolute, non-conceptual nature of reality. Masters might use shocking, paradoxical methods to point beyond concepts, but this does not mean that intellectual capacity or study is irrelevant. Many great teachers were highly educated and intellectually sophisticated. They used their cognitive abilities skillfully, while not being limited or trapped by conceptual frameworks. As a teacher puts it, thinking is not the problem. The problem is thinking that thinking is all there is. Misconception 4, it is mystical or supernatural. Some popular portrayals emphasize mysterious experiences, special powers, or supernatural insights. This can create the impression that practice is about attaining altered states of consciousness or acquiring magical abilities unavailable to ordinary people. While profound, transformative experiences may indeed occur in practice, they are not the point. It is fundamentally about waking up to the reality of this present moment, just as it is, not about escaping into otherworldly or exotic states. It is about seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary, not seeking something beyond our ordinary experience. As the saying goes, the ultimate miracle is not walking on water or through fire. The ultimate miracle is walking on the earth. The most profound realization is not some esoteric experience, but the direct, clear recognition of the wonder and completeness of ordinary reality. Misconception 5, it is a quick fix. In our culture of instant gratification, meditation is sometimes marketed as a quick solution to stress, anxiety, or unhappiness. This can create unrealistic expectations about what practice can deliver, especially in the short term. While meditation can indeed provide immediate benefits, such as relaxation or temporary mental calm, the deeper transformations that it points to, freedom from the sense of separate self, the flowering of wisdom and compassion, typically unfold gradually through consistent, dedicated practice over time. There may be moments of sudden insight, but integrating these insights into the fabric of our daily life is usually a longer, more nuanced process. It is better understood as a lifelong path of exploration and discovery, than as a technique for quick results. The question is not so much, what will I get from this, but rather, am I willing to show up consistently and engage authentically with whatever arises? Misconception 6. It is worship of the founder. Some people, unfamiliar with the tradition, mistakenly assume that practitioners worship the founder as a god or divine figure. They may be confused by the presence of statues or by the bowing that is part of ritual. In it, the founder is not viewed as a deity to be worshipped, but as a human being who discovered and fully exemplified the potential for awakening that exists within all of us. He is a teacher, a guide, an inspiration. Bowing to images is not worship in the Western religious sense. It is a gesture of respect, gratitude, and a recognition of our own inherent awakened nature. As one saying provocatively puts it, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. This is not a call to violence, but a powerful warning against turning the founder, or any spiritual concept, into an object of attachment or external authority. The true awakened one is not the historical figure or any statue, it is the awakened nature of reality itself, which we must realize for ourselves. By clarifying these common misconceptions, we can approach it with more accurate expectations and a clearer understanding of what the practice actually involves. Rather than an escape from life, it provides a way to enter more fully, freely, and compassionately into life just as it is. Practical guidance for beginners. If you feel inspired to explore this practice for yourself, here are some practical, down-to-earth suggestions for getting started in a sustainable and supportive way. Start small. Rather than trying to establish an ambitious meditation schedule right away, sitting for an hour a day, for instance, begin with short, manageable, but regular periods of practice. Even just 5 or 10 minutes of sitting meditation each day is valuable and can establish a positive habit. Consistency matters far more than duration, especially in the beginning. Find a time that works reliably with your daily rhythm. Many people find that meditating first thing in the morning, before the day's activities begin, helps establish a consistent routine. Make it as regular and non-negotiable as brushing your teeth. Create a supportive environment. If possible, designate a specific, quiet place in your home for meditation. It doesn't need to be elaborate, a corner of a bedroom or living room where you can place a cushion or a chair. This dedicated spot will become associated with practice and can help cue your mind and body to settle. Some people find it helpful to create a simple, small altar with objects that remind them of their intention to practice, perhaps a candle, a fresh flower, a stone, or a meaningful image. This isn't about worship, it's about creating visual, tangible reminders of what matters to you. Do what you can to minimize potential distractions during your meditation time. Turn off your phone or put it in another room. Let others in your household know that you need a brief period of uninterrupted quiet. Learn basic posture for seated meditation. You can meditate sitting on a cushion on the floor, on a meditation bench, or in a chair. The key elements of good meditation posture are: Keep your spine relatively straight and upright, but not rigid or stiff. Imagine your head being gently pulled upward by a string, lengthening your spine. Allow your shoulders to relax and drop away from your ears. Place your hands in a comfortable, resting position, either on your thighs or cupped in your lap. If sitting on a cushion, cross your legs in a way that feels stable and supportive. If using a chair, place both feet flat on the floor. Keep your eyes slightly open, with a soft, downward gaze, focused on the floor a few feet in front of you. This helps prevent drowsiness and keeps you connected to your environment, rather than withdrawing inward. Explore different postures to find what works best for your body. There is no single, correct way to sit. What matters is finding a position that allows for both alertness and relative comfort, so you can forget about your body and simply be present. Start with breath awareness. A simple and profoundly effective way to begin meditation is to focus your attention gently on the natural rhythm of your breathing. You are not trying to control or change your breath in any way, you are simply observing it with curious, gentle attention. You might notice the physical sensations of breathing at the nostrils, the rise and fall of the chest, or the movement of the abdomen. Choose wherever the breath feels most vivid and easy to feel. When your mind inevitably wanders, which it will, repeatedly, gently and kindly bring your attention back to the sensation of the breath. There is no need for judgment or frustration. This simple, repetitive practice of noticing and returning is the very heart of training the mind. It cultivates both concentration and a kind, accepting attitude toward yourself. Consider finding a teacher or group. While it is entirely possible to begin a practice on your own using books and online resources, connecting with an experienced teacher or a practice community can provide invaluable guidance, support, and inspiration. A good teacher can offer personalized instruction, help clarify confusion, point out blind spots in your practice, and provide the living transmission that is so central. A practice group provides the encouragement and camaraderie of sitting with others who share similar aspirations. There is a powerful, supportive energy in sitting in silence together that is not easily replicated in solitary practice. Look for reputable centers, temples, or meditation groups in your local area. Many now also offer online options, making it possible to connect with teachers and communities regardless of your location. Integrate mindfulness into daily activities. Beyond formal sitting meditation, look for opportunities to bring mindful awareness into your everyday activities. Choose one routine activity, like washing the dishes, brushing your teeth, walking to your car, or drinking a cup of tea, and practice doing it with your full, undivided attention. Notice the sensations, the movements, the sounds, even the thoughts that arise during these activities. When you catch yourself operating on autopilot, lost in thought, simply notice it and gently return your attention to the sensory experience of the activity. This integration of mindfulness into daily life is crucial. It helps bridge the gap between the formal practice on the cushion and the rest of your waking life. Be patient and kind with yourself. Perhaps the most important advice for beginners is to approach your practice with immense patience and self-compassion. Progress in meditation is not linear. You will inevitably encounter periods of restlessness, boredom, frustration, and doubt. These challenging experiences are not signs of failure, they are natural, expected parts of the process. Every time you notice your mind has wandered and you gently guide it back to the present, you are strengthening the muscle of awareness. This is the practice, even if it doesn't feel like progress in the moment. Remember that it is not about achieving a special state or becoming a different person. It is about meeting your actual, present moment experience with awareness and kindness, whatever that experience may be. Keep it simple. As you continue in practice, you may encounter a vast array of techniques, teachings, and traditions. While exploration can be interesting and valuable, there is great wisdom in keeping your core practice simple, especially in the beginning. The essence of practice is remarkably straightforward: show up, pay attention, and meet what arises with awareness and a compassionate heart. Everything else, the philosophy, the rituals, the different schools, is ultimately elaboration. As a master famously said, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's there are few. Try to approach your practice with this beginner's mind, open, curious, and free from fixed ideas about what meditation should be like or what you should be experiencing. As we gently draw our exploration to a close, it's worth reflecting on the continuous, ever-unfolding, never-finished nature of this path. Unlike many pursuits in life that have clear endpoints, certificates, or achievements, practice is never truly completed. It is a lifelong journey of discovery, deepening, and transformation. This open-ended quality can be challenging for our minds, which are so conditioned to seek closure, accomplishment, and definitive answers. We naturally want to know if we're making progress, if we're getting it right, if we're approaching some final goal or finish line. It, in its gentle but persistent way, undermines these very questions. It invites us into a process that is its own reward. As a master wrote, if you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? This teaching points to the stunning immediacy and accessibility of what we are ultimately seeking. It is not something distant to be attained after years of struggle, but the very nature of this present moment, when it is seen clearly, without the filter of our wanting, fearing, and thinking. Yet, for most of us, this clear seeing does not happen all at once and for all. We get glimpses, moments of unusual clarity, presence, and peace, followed by a return to the familiar, often frustrating, fog of our habitual thinking and reactive patterns. The practice is to notice both the clarity and the fog with the same accepting, non-judgmental awareness. Neither clinging to the special experiences nor rejecting the ordinary ones. Over time, with consistent, patient practice, something subtle but significant begins to shift. The boundaries we once felt so solidly between practice, sitting on the cushion, and the rest of life, begin to soften and dissolve. We may find ourselves bringing the same quality of gentle, present attention to washing the dishes as we do to formal meditation. We notice how reactive patterns that once seemed inevitable and overpowering now have a little space around them, room for a conscious choice rather than an automatic, unconscious reaction. These changes can be so gradual and subtle that we ourselves may not notice them at first. Sometimes, it is others, a friend, a family member, who comments that we seem more present in conversation, less reactive to criticism, or more at ease in challenging situations. Often, It is in our relationships that the most tangible fruits of practice become apparent. As our exploration comes to a close for tonight, it is time to completely allow your body and mind to drift peacefully toward sleep. Let the concepts, stories, and teachings we've explored settle gently in your awareness, without any effort to remember, understand, or organize them. Trust deeply that what is most valuable and necessary for you will remain, even as your conscious, thinking mind relaxes into the soft embrace of sleep. The wisdom is not something to be grasped intellectually or stored as information. It is something to be absorbed naturally, organically, like rain soaking slowly into the earth, nourishing the roots without any effort from the plant. As you rest now, allow yourself to simply be, without effort, without striving. This effortless being is itself a direct taste of what it points to, the peace and freedom that are always present when we stop rushing, stop trying to become something different, and allow ourselves to rest in our natural, aware presence. Feel the weight of your body, fully supported by the bed or surface beneath you. Notice the gentle, natural rhythm of your breathing, flowing in and out without any conscious control on your part. Listen to any sounds in your environment, near or far, without labeling them or judging them, just pure, simple hearing. As thoughts arise, perhaps reflections on what you've heard, plans for tomorrow, or wanderings to unrelated matters, simply notice them with gentle awareness. There is no need to follow them, no need to push them away. Like clouds moving through a vast sky, they can drift through the spaciousness of your awareness without disturbing its fundamental tranquility and peace. In these precious moments before sleep, you are practicing what is called non-doing. You are not actively trying to accomplish anything, not even trying to fall asleep. This letting go of all effort creates the optimal conditions for deep, natural, restorative rest to arise on its own. As you continue to relax, you might become aware of subtle sensations throughout your body, areas of tension gradually releasing, feelings of warmth or coolness, perhaps tingling or pulsing. Meet these sensations with the same gentle, allowing awareness you've been cultivating. They are not problems to be fixed. They are simply part of your living experience in this present moment. Remember that sleep itself is a natural, organic process that requires no effort on your part. Your body knows perfectly well how to sleep. You only need to create the conditions, relaxation, surrender, trust, for this innate, bodily wisdom to express itself. By releasing conscious control and surrendering to your body's deep intelligence, you allow sleep to emerge gently, organically. If you find that sleep doesn't come easily tonight, that is perfectly okay, too. Even lying in a state of restful, aware presence provides significant restoration and benefits for your body and mind. Rather than struggling against wakefulness, you can rest in the peace of simply being, without adding the additional stress of worrying about sleep. In the tradition, there is even a practice called sleeping Zen, where practitioners learn to maintain a soft, thin thread of awareness even as they drift into sleep. This isn't about controlling the sleep process, but about allowing awareness to gently accompany you into the dream world, creating a beautiful continuity of presence between your waking and sleeping states. As we conclude, I invite you to let go completely of concepts, of effort, of any need to understand or remember anything from our journey together. Simply rest in the silent, aware presence that is reading these words, that is feeling your body, that is hearing sounds, that is always, already present beneath the surface of all your changing experiences. May your sleep be deep, peaceful, and profoundly restorative. And may you wake feeling refreshed, carrying the quiet, simple insight into your new day. Not as something separate from your ordinary life, but as the very ground of being from which all your experiences arise. Good night. And thank you for joining me on this journey through the heart of the tradition, the religion of no religion, the path that is no path, leading to the destination that was never, ever absent. Rest well, in the peace that is your true nature.